Hi, this is David Baumblatt from Terabint Leadership. Thanks for joining the program. Today, we are going to be talking about a couple issues. Obviously, the FISA is very important for those who don't know. We'll talk about it again. And then we're going to reiterate, again, the same prediction that I'm predicting that's becoming more and more mainstream, and that is our system is going to go down, just like the history books do. There is a little bit of, not debate, but this would be from specific politicians that have been pushed outside from MAGA, Senator, I guess Congressman Massey, and then some other ones about a new way forward, how to do the new way forward politically. And I just disagree with it. And I'll say again, my prediction, which is going to be, again, a lot more people are going to be leaving anyway. But leadership 101. You cannot, in fact, I've always said this, the last, what I consider to be a legitimate, good leader in our military, particularly West Point, was probably General Schwarzkopf. Now, we're not going to argue the morality of us doing the Persian Gulf War, number one. This is Kuwait. I get it. If people could say, same thing, it's all about the oil. I'm not going to argue with that. But there's a sense of competence. He won the war and this and that. And there's a lot of great leadership traits that he did. So some of this stuff is not coming from me. It's what I've learned. But one of them, General Schwarzkopf said many times, is you cannot solve the problem until you or the group recognizes that you have a problem. It's similar like an alcoholic. An alcoholic is never going to solve his or her problem until they probably first admit you're an alcoholic. And many times we don't want to recognize these problems on ourselves, in our family, in our community, or maybe even our own country. Why? Because it's self-deprecating. It's the same thing. Another reason, use common sense. You know why I never wanted to come out also in public is because when I speak negatively about these organizations, this is who I am. This is my resume. So we all want to feel good about ourselves, have confidence, our children to look up to us. And so if I say stuff like the FBI, for example, is both incompetent and immoral corrupt, well, then it doesn't also look good on me because I'm a former FBI agent. And the one that probably hit me the hardest was West Point. I've said many times, I've always considered that to be my greatest accomplishment. West Point is considered the premier leadership institute of the world. And we're going to do a military episode too. And this goes with Pete Hegseth. And I've said many times, West Point is in decline. People didn't believe me, but even Donald Trump, and I criticize a lot on Donald Trump. We're going to criticize him on this. But when he first came out and he started saying negative stuff about the military, the generals, and he got Pete Hegseth in there specifically to change the direction. It's absolutely the truth. Our military leadership is going down, and it's being led by a decline of West Point. Well, that doesn't make me look good. I've always felt very proud and in some ways you could almost say arrogant that I graduated West Point. Can't say that anymore. I really do. I think West Point's been in decline for decades. So going back to the original point that we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the FISA. We're going to talk about how America's in decline. We're going to talk about how there is, again, recommendations for a new political direction. I just disagree with it, and I'll reiterate mine. But one of the keys is you have to say is you can't solve a problem until you first admit it. Now, when I left America in 2010, this stuff about collapse, revolution, civil war, the government's corrupt, that was much more radical back then. It's becoming mainstream. And I did a short clip on X where President Biden said the government's corrupt. And I get it. We don't like Biden, even though I think both the Democrats and the Republicans both suck. But President Biden says the government's corrupt. Well, President Trump said the same thing. You got a former FBI agent who's saying the government's corrupt. And guess what? You have more and more Americans that are saying the government's corrupt. Well, that's a recipe for revolution if that keeps up. And that's happening. So sooner or later, it's going to become mainstream. Maybe it's already had, and we're going to do a clip here on Tucker Carlson. I think it is. But again, when I left in 2010, it wasn't. And it definitely was not when I grew up in New York. You know, the government's corrupt. There's going to be a revolution. No. I mean, when I went to high school in New York, there was no such thing about Civil War, revolution, collapse. Didn't hear anything like that. When I was at West Point, nothing. The first thought that it started coming to my mind was 2005. That was the first thought where I thought, I don't think this system is going to get, meaning America is going to get better. I think it's going to get worse. And then got to the point 2010, I just left. Anyway, let's go on to some news here. And this is interesting too. I don't even keep track of these dates. I guess this is the anniversary for World War II, the invasion of Normandy. We're going to just show what's happening. I mean, this is everywhere in the news. We're going to show 4 quick things, and then we're going to talk about it real quick. Because I think you're like me. You're seeing this over and over every year. Let's discuss it, especially from a West Pointer. Let's discuss that because this is not normal. And we have to start talking about this. So here we go. So anyway, yeah, whatever. Republicans, you would get this D-Day, remember. Okay, great. Then we come over here. We get this guy, Ambassador Mike Waltz. He knows about me. He's the Green Beret. I'm not very impressed with special operations anymore. I'm not impressed with these military officers. And he spends American taxpayer money. I just want to make sure, yeah, so you could see that. Because he wants to do one of these Normandy drops to think he's real cool. Yeah, okay, that's great. Then we come here. Who's this? Oh, Pete Hegseth. Yeah, D-Day. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Sure, that's Eisenhower. That's not you, buddy. That's for sure. But anyway, let's go on to this. What is it? Oh, Fox News. That's it. Everyone's getting there. All the MAGA people. That's where Fox News. D-Day, D-Day, D-Day. So what am I going to say this? Let me just bring this down here. Let's just have a quick talk on this. Do you notice that World War II seems to be front and center when it comes to remembering our veterans? Thank you for our service. Look what good they've done. I mean, we had a lot of other wars. It almost seems disrespectful. Have you ever seen this type of media and propaganda for the Vietnam War? People got drafted into the Vietnam, the Korean War. How about Afghanistan, Iraq? Those total failures. You know, I still see these dumb clips. I saw a clip from the United States Marine Corps. If you read my book, I was really into the Marines. Then there was a reason I didn't go into it. But boy, there's a lot of dumb propaganda from the Marine Corps. We've never lost a war ever. Oh, really? I don't know. I could think of many. So starting from Vietnam. So maybe the logic is, David, we're focusing on World War II because we won. Okay, but we don't admit we lost any of the others, number one. And it's still disrespectful, even if you lost the war. What? So the Vietnam vets went to Vietnam and they lost the war. My father's a Vietnam vet, never got drafted. He volunteered. And I did ask him, I said, Dad, what do you think about that war? Do you think we should have went? He goes, no, it was wrong. I said, then why did you go? He goes, that was my duty. He goes, my job is not to pick and choose the wars. I put my trust in my government. Notice that phrase, I put my trust in my government. Notice how America's changed. His son, West Point, I don't trust the government anymore. Notice that though, different. But he mentioned that. He's like, David, we can't live in a society where the men say, well, let me pick and choose what war. I'll go to that war, but not that war. I'll go to that one, but not that. Maybe one of the reasons why we're not celebrating Vietnam is because we have a president, Donald Trump, who dodged the draft multiple times for Vietnam. Talk about embarrassing. Now, I knew this about Donald Trump. I'm doing tangents, but we'll get to the subject. But I was thinking, based upon his propaganda campaigning, that I knew he was a draft dodger, but I was assuming he was going to be the no wars. So that coincides. He's like, listen, I was not into the Vietnam War. I'm not going to admit I dodged the draft, but we get it. But I'm against wars. I get it. But a draft dodger who's now full war hawk, that is just, I mean, it's embarrassing. It's unethical. It's whatever. But anyway, like I said, going back to the stores, we don't really honor Vietnam vets. What about the vets coming from Iraq and Afghanistan, which was a total complete failure, by the way? So we lost those wars. And what's my prediction? Iran, we're going to totally lose that war. And what did I say? Donald Trump has absolutely deviated from nationalism. He's going right back to globalism. And there's something about him with Israel. Compromise, bribe, you name it. Something's very strange. Are we America first or are we Israel first? But anyway, I want to keep going on this because we do have to understand the powers that be. But And as a West Point graduate, I take this more serious, but it seems to be World War II is, and let's face it, if our World War II veterans were alive today, they would have never fought in that war, literally. So your World War II veterans, and let me do another tangent. I had good friends with a lot of Polish people. And so the poor was, you didn't see it, but in one of those clips, it said, we liberated Europe. No, that's a flat out lie. The Poles are actually extremely angry with America. Why? Because we sold them out. Because we partnered with the Soviet Union, the communists. Now, it is true the Nazis occupied Poland. And oh, by the way, there were mixed feelings on that. Beautiful city is Danzig in northern. I think it's in Polish, it's pronounced Gdansk. That was Danzig. So at the time, and Adolf Hitler went into the city, and the Poles actually looked very up to the Nazis. Now, you can argue whatever you want, but the truth is, to the Poles, when America liberated Europe and they kicked out the Nazis from Poland and they allowed the Soviet Union to take over Poland, to this day, the Poles are absolutely furious with that whole thing. That's not liberation. So America comes in and says, we're going to liberate Europe, Poland, along with the Czech Republic, all this. You are now under communism. It would have been like, we would rather have Nazi Germany. So I could go on, but I think it's an interesting question to say, World War II seems to be front and center with this propaganda of thank you for your service, even though the government doesn't care about military veterans. If they did, I wouldn't even be on social media because they would have responded to me privately over years and years. So why is that war? Why aren't other wars? And it is disrespectful to the military veterans, win or lose, like Vietnam. Did we lose in Vietnam? 100%. Was that war wrong? 100%. But you don't put blame on the soldiers. Do you put blame on the military officers? I'll buy that for $1. The politicians? Absolutely. The president? Absolutely. But not the soldiers. They should be honored. We don't do much. But it seems like World War II. Think I'm wrong? I don't know. You think. Hey, Noah, I see you right there. Noah, 1 second. I'll mention that. I see Noah B. Price mentioned a couple things. Anyway, so we talked about that. Let me just talk about one other quick thing coming up, and that is 1 second. Let me share the screen here. But you can see like the propaganda. So remember, we're talking about World War II. I don't know. This came up. This is pretty interesting, don't you think? Let me see if everyone can see this. 1 second. The Pentagon raised the threat of it. Now, I want you to know that's the Defense Intelligence Agency. So what does this mean? There's a couple things that you need to understand here. Hopefully everyone could read that. This is also becoming more and more news. When I was in the FBI, the Israelis were treated in a very 50-50. So you have what's called Mossad, their version of CIA, and then you have what's called Shin Bet, their version of the FBI. All I could say is the propaganda is they're our greatest ally, this and this and this. Well, you just saw the article. And I can tell you something, when it comes to the FBI and the CIA, they are much more biased. The defense intel, and it's different. Like I said, we all want to put the government in one big basket. Just like we all like to say the government's corrupt. There are people in there, though, that obviously either are not corrupt or they're not playing by the agenda, and it goes by different agencies. This also goes into the deep state, where a lot of these agencies, so here we're talking about the defense intelligence agencies, through decades and decades of certain leadership, they could start deviating. Because again, these are career governmental people. So don't think that the intelligence community is on the same sheet. And it sounds like Donald Trump is taking the Directorate of National Intelligence, put in a new person. I don't know who this person is. Like I said, and sometimes I don't pay too much attention to it. Why? Because the main prediction is going to happen. It's going to collapse. I guess it's sort of like looking at stocks, and you know this certain stock is going to collapse, but someone's like, no, it's up, it's down, it's up. And I'm like, dude, I'm out already. The stock is going to collapse. Give it time. So that's why we're not looking at it so much. We'll get into the FISA. But anyway, in terms of the Israeli, that's a pretty interesting thing. Again, you don't think we're in this war with Iran because of Israel? You don't think there's some type of influence that's going on from a foreign power, Israel, in our country? It's very strange. And who should be front and center for this? It's the FBI. That's the front and center in terms of domestic intelligence. In fact, let's say it now before we get into in terms of the FISA. There's a CIA, former CIA person who's on social media. I actually like him. I've said many times. His name's John Kiriakou. And he seems like a really smart guy. There's a couple things I disagree with him, but he mentioned about the FBI and he was off. I was just surprised. Now, of course, he's CIA, so we're not expecting him to understand the FBI, but he did a liaison with MI5. And I have to admit, I probably would say British intelligence is truly our closest ally. During my time in the FBI, I would see MI6 and MI5 having a lot of access in our space, in our buildings, which that really shows you who we trust. And I get that. We share a lot of history with the UK and the Five Eyes. We get it. But anyway, seemed to be confused. He did a podcast and he's like, in the UK, I explain it very simple. The FBI is basically MI5 and the Scotland Yard combined. It is both law enforcement and intelligence, primarily domestic intelligence. So the FBI spies overseas, but primarily domestic intelligence, law enforcement combined. It's basically MI5 and Scotland Yard combined. I won't go into it. I overall, I think John Kiriakou, I think he's on it, but he did some comparisons that he was off. But that's basically the entity of the FBI. With FISA, and before we get to the video, we'll just do a little bit with FISA right now, and that is because the FBI, and we are the only first tier country in the world that does this. Why do I mention first tier? Because if you go to a lot of countries that are just not developed, like truly dictatorial, an authoritarian, I don't know, we'll just pick a country in Africa where they don't even have their systems. We're talking law enforcement, even military intelligence at a developed level. It's the king, and the king does whatever he wants, meaning intelligence and law enforcement combined. But in developed countries, think about Western countries, they're separated. Why? Because due process. Now, what is the point of that? Well, remember, in leadership, you're always looking at legality and morality, legality and morality. So anytime when someone says, we're just going to look at legality, that's not leadership. In fact, leadership looks at morality first, legality second. So I'm trying to make this point because I want you to understand, and you probably do, that there's two different types of entities, or you could say negative entities, that a country can face from a threat. One would be criminal. Think of a bank robber or a drug dealer. That's criminal. But then think of a spy or a terrorist. And when a spy or a terrorist, the damage that they can do is at the national security level, where it's rare that a drug dealer, now sometimes they overlap, drugs can get into funding and terrorism. There's a lot of this matrix and web. But generally speaking, if you deal with drugs, even at a high level, and many times people don't know, but the FBI, we work drugs as well. We work top drug cases or work with the DA. But generally speaking, that would be of a criminal nature, just like a bank robber. So does the FBI spy on American citizens where they have probable cause of a crime? Absolutely. I hope that's not a surprise. We all know that. The FBI, I'm forgetting these names. I think it's Title 10. They go up on Title 10s where they could tap your phone, look in your computers, surveil you, everything. But there needs to be evidence, probable cause of a crime. And then we'll go to a judge, meaning this is worked through the Fourth Amendment, where they think, okay, we think this guy's a bank robber, a drug dealer, a pedophile, whatever. But there has to be evidence of a crime. And if through the Fourth Amendment, the judge will then authorize the FBI to basically start searching you and surveilling you, and you could say then revoking your privacy for whatever you want to call it, but then they start spying on you, surveilling you. But I think we could all agree that this is the nature of the beast that all first-tier countries do, and that is, again, there's evidence of a crime, probable cause, through a court of law. And oh, by the way, that is all black and white, dictated. So when it goes to court. That's all has what's called discovery. So your defense lawyer can ask that. What gave you the right to, tap his phones? Well, we had probable cause. We went to a judge. So there's a paper trail. So that way, our system, before they send you to jail, if you're convicted, innocent until proven guilty, there's a trail, there's names, there needed to be probable cause. So hopefully that's not a surprise to anyone. But what about this thing called national security that's so dangerous? Let's face it, a spy or a terrorist is at such a level, it's national security. So in Britain, that is absolutely separated into MI5. But MI5 has no arrest authority. They have no law enforcement ability. And they're only focused on spies and terrorists. The FBI combines them. And the problem when they combine them is that iron curtain can get flimsy. And so the part is the FBI, this is through the FISA. What happened is I was in the FBI exactly at this time, because you probably all heard of the Patriot Act. Maybe that sounds familiar. That came about post 9/11, or basically 9/11 triggered the Patriot Act. And what was that? Well, that was the FISA on steroids that gave them even more power. Now, I've made it clear, I have no problem at all, FISA, Patriot Act, when it comes to foreign nationals. I could care less if they're in America or overseas. I've said this many times. This is only about U.S. citizens. Now, when I was in the FBI, if you were a Muslim but an American citizen, there's a high likelihood the FBI was spying on you. It's not like I was a champion of Muslims. I got no problem with Islam, but I've also said Christianity belongs to the West, and I'm not a big fan of Islam and these other religions in the West. That's a different story, but they were American citizens. And I've said this before. Yesterday it was Muslims. Today it could be Christians, meaning it's the principle of it, leadership, and that is they are U.S. citizens. What evidence do you have of them being a terrorist or a spy? And because of this national security FISA Patriot Act, I don't care what they're saying in Congress. I mean, do you really believe the government anymore? I mean, it's gotten to the point now, it's so corrupt, they're going to spy on you. And it's wrong. I don't see any other way. Well, we got to go through the videos, because if you said, but David, what's the solution? And I've said this before. Do you really think you're going to fix the FBI or you're going to fix the CIA, and yet America is collapsing? I mean, they're one and the same. So if you've got a problem in our United States government, this whole system that we have is going down. But we're going to fix the FBI and the CIA. So the part, it's going to be one kind of system. The whole system's going down. And so if you ask me how to fix it, I'm going to tell you at the end, and I've said this before, where you've got to fix it holistically. And that is, it's kind of like you're in a company called Enron and you're trying to fix it, say how we could fix it. And you're like, this corporation is going bankrupt. It is what it is. Maybe it's the biblical, the phoenix rising from the ashes, where things have to be rebuilt. But I don't even think you're going to be able to, what I'm looking for, like a nick and taking a screwdriver and a wrench and just fixing a little here, fixing a little here. And the FBI's fixed. It's all connected. It's all weaved together. And that's what I've said. When I left in 2010, everything is really falling apart. And as much as I criticize Donald Trump or the Republicans, do you really think the Democrats are going to save this thing? Not really. Let's go to a couple more things, and then we'll come back here. Let me think. Am I on it? Okay, so I went to that. That's an interesting thing. We could talk more about that. This is kind of a different subject, but I just wanted to share this here. I know we're going off subject, but it is kind of going to a similar part. And America's falling apart, but I just want to say this. But now that I'm on social media, I've been censored so many times on social media. What I didn't realize is how much pornography is on social media. And I'm big into freedom. But if we're going to have freedom, we have to have freedom of speech. That's how you control culture. Well, control is a strong word, but freedom of speech. But if you take away freedom of speech, we're going to lose our culture. But I'm just saying, for a military veteran who's reporting government corruption, I've been censored so many times. Why? That's a good question. But I've seen so much pornography on X, on TikTok. I mean, really hardcore pornography. And then it wonders, why are we getting censored? But anyway, my thought to that is going back to this, and my advice to men and women is I think men are just absolutely inundated with sexuality. And trust me, I'm not trying to act like I'm a holy roller. Yeah, I look at porn. I grew up to it. It's okay. I'm not a holy roller. But what I am saying though is it's gotten to the point that when I grew up, you saw a little bit of sex and it was, there's no doubt about it. You're like, oh my God, now though, it's too much. It's like all these women, it's just, and it's one of the reasons that society's going to collapse, because you've broken marriage, you've broken the bonds between a man and woman, no one's making kids. It just seems to be women, for a lack of a better word, and I can talk bad about men, but women seem to be turning to prostitutes, but there is so much sex. So I'd be surprised that men really are looking for sex anymore. I think what they are looking for is beauty. These are some beautiful looking women. Look at their clothes. And it is. I see so many women dressing like they're half naked. You don't need to do it. These are some beautiful women. In fact, the clothing is very beautiful too. So again, just the point that there's a difference between looking sexy and looking beautiful. And my guess is men in the West, they're looking for beautiful women. They're not looking for sexy women. Why? Because they're everywhere, these sexy women. Like, it's turning into a little bit just too vulgar now. We just don't need it. It's just too much. Anyway, let me go to one. Let me thank a couple people on here who've first one let me go to is, let me see if I'm going. Okay, first one is this person. I can't even pronounce this name. Deto Prague. He came out to me. He's like, hey, I can help you out here, stuff like that. But I want to thank him. He gave me some advice. And then the other one, let me just bring this up. Noah, let me bring up Noah's page. How can I do that? 1 second, my bad. I think I got to go all the way up here. And then Noah reached out to me. Hopefully can everyone see this? Oh, I got to come here 1 second. Share this tab. This is the last one, then we'll get into it. But I always like to say thanks. So Noah, again, just out of the blue, he's like, hey, I could help you out. It's not like I got a big channel, right? But it's the principle. You, at the very least, what did our mom and dad always say? Say thank you. So anyway, this is Noah. This is his page right here. He said he could help me out and this and that. And I've mentioned it many times. Well, sorry, Pro. I mentioned it many times. The reason why Americans should help out whistleblowers is when you report government corruption, it's a public good. But I've made it known, and this is why everyone knows it's a cover-up. If you're a private American citizen, then I'm asking for your help. That's it. If you're a politician or in the US government, I'm not asking for your help. I'm asking you to do your job. That's your job. Me, as a former US Army officer and FBI agent, you swore an oath to that. You are on taxpayer dime. Your salary, your pension comes from taxpayers. You have a duty. And these politicians know about me. The Trump administration knows about me. That's a cover-up. I'm not asking them for help. I'm asking them to do their job. And the more and more I'm ignored or even blocked by some of these Trump administration people, what does it do? It just shows there's a cover-up. So I make it known, if you're a private American citizen, I truly appreciate your support. If you're a politician or Trump administrating the government, whatever, you are in dereliction of your duty. And if you're an American citizen who pays their tax money, today they're ignoring me. Tomorrow they might ignore you. Why are you paying to them? Same thing when I report this to Chuck Grassley in 2007. Remember I said, yesterday they were spying on Muslim Americans. And I get it. Some people are like, I could care less about Muslims. I get that. But it's the principle. Those Muslims, like it or not, they're US citizens. And yesterday they're spying on Muslims. Who cares? US citizens. Today they could be spying on you as a US citizen. It's the principles. But I'm telling you, the FISA thing is still broken. Anyway, let's go. I see Cool Kid. You get censored for typing the lyrics of these ghetto songs. I'm just saying, I'm not saying we have to censor pornography. There's a way we can battle pornography, and I've said that. But you have to allow freedom of speech. And so the part is you've heard many times of women say, you can't judge me. Oh, yes, we can. It's freedom of speech. So if women want to wear the most trashy and slutty clothing they want, okay, that's your freedom. It's my freedom of speech, though, because everyone judges. You're probably judging me right now. And if you tell people, don't judge people, well, that's a judgment on itself. But if you take away freedom of speech, and we know this, and what group of Americans probably have the tightest lip freedom of speech controls? Probably white men, white Christian men, white heterosexual men. You can't do it. We're going to lose it. We have to. And that's what I'm telling you. I don't know why people thank military veterans for their service. We're not defending the freedom of speech, that's for sure. We're going to Iran. We're killing Iran. We're doing all this stuff for our freedom. Freedom of speech is absolutely dying in America. Dying. Europe, forget it. Europe, it's gone. But the point being is if we are allowed freedom of speech, that is the cornerstone of culture. Believe it or not, we human beings communicate. And freedom of speech is also how you communicate what you wear. And I get it. Women want to wear slutty, sexy clothing. I get it. Men can judge, and we could say certain things. I'm telling you, if you really want to preserve your culture, many times you don't have to do it with a new law, like restricting this and that. Have free speech. Have free speech. It's our cornerstone, but free speech is dying. Anyway, let's go on to this right here. And this is interesting. Before we go on to the FISA, we're going to go on to the FBI. Now, the FBI is the cornerstone to FISA. Why? I've said I don't care about how they're spying on foreign nationals. I really don't. Whether a foreign national is located in America or abroad, we have so many problems in America. Let's focus on America first. And what's America first? U.S. citizens. Let's focus on U.S. citizens. And that right there, the central piece to that, the FBI. The FBI. Anyway, this is a comment about the FBI, and I mentioned this before, where a lot of the MAGA people drank the Kool-Aid. They kept saying Dan Bongino's all. I told them, before Dan Bongino became the deputy director, he knew about me. He blocked me and unblocked me, which is weird on it. I've written to his people because he was doing podcasting. Now, he's a private individual then. He should have helped me out, government corruption. Then he became the deputy director of the FBI. I'm not asking for his help. That was his duty. Anyway, I'm telling you, what you're going to start seeing, and this is going to go on and later on where I say, how's the problem going to get fixed? Remember what I'm about to say. We are not going to come together anymore, people. You have to, I guess what I'm trying to say is, maybe you're a man, because it's usually the woman who initiates the divorce. And as a man, you've said, no, this can't be happening. She loves me, and we're going to work this out. And you don't even know what she's doing behind your back. And sooner or later, the advice comes, maybe an older man to the younger man and says, listen, buddy, you got to get it together. Your marriage is over. You're going to get a divorce. No, man, but I've known her since I was 18 years old, and we're in love, and she'd never do this. And I'm telling you, this problem is not new. What she's been doing behind your back and this, that, we all know it, that sometimes marriages get so bad that they're going to divorce. That's what I'm trying to tell the American people. And I'm gonna point it out specifically as we get to the last videos. But this union, which is a marriage, in some ways it's a union of 50 states. It's coming apart, people. You could believe it now or you believe it later. But again, this right here is another example of Dan Bongino. There's so many. Our government is not getting better. And a lot of the Trump people drank the Kool-Aid and think he's going to save it. He's not. And I've always said that. The best is yet to come. Let's take a look at this video quick.
Talking about the Epstein files.
Please do not let that.
You phony. Dan Bongino, who's famously said, don't ever stop talking about the Epstein files.
Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this.
He gets in a position of power to do something about it, and now he changes his tune to say, I was there to do my job, which is to keep custody of the evidence. No, you weren't there to keep custody of the evidence. You were there to put in custody for the people who are in that evidence. You phony. Anyway, I get upset.
You have every reason to.
And I mentioned this many times. The truth be told, that the people in the FBI and the government, they are not the best and the brightest. It's changed. And people who saw my videos, I've told you before. But what I can say is, if you're the deputy director of the FBI, most American men, generally speaking, would feel like they won in some sort of way the lotto to be the deputy director of the FBI. Again, I was what was considered to be a normal special agent, which was, even when I left, I said, I'm very honored and privileged to be given a chance to be in the FBI, but I said, it's just not for me. And I tried to be as politically correct as possible, and I left. And I even told my friend, I said, part of the reason I'm leaving is I know there are thousands and thousands of American men and women that are dying to become an FBI special agent. Then let them do it. Maybe I'm wrong, because obviously back then when I left, they're like, no, you're wrong. The war on terror. You get it's the same thing when there's a war with Iran or Afghanistan. In the beginning, people will tell you you're wrong. We're on the right side of God or whatever. And you're like, okay. But I said, I'm leaving. The deputy director of the FBI, let's just use common sense. It is radically different than my position, not just in terms of influence, in terms of money and benefits. It is a nice position. So you have a guy named Dan Bongino, and the reason why we're focusing on Dan is he's not an anomaly. I'm telling you, it's everywhere in the government. So you have a person who's a deputy director in the FBI, and he's made his money as this patriotic podcaster. He's says, he'll fight for corruption, America. And now he's in a position, and he was in there for less than a year. Never communicate with me. Of course, I didn't need to communicate with Dan, but he had the power. He knew about me to have one of the FBI to contact me. Never did. But then he quit. So now I want to ask you something. A position in the FBI that most American men would be like, it would be like winning the lotto. They would be like, deputy director of the FBI. Why did he quit? You don't think there's a correlation to probably Dan looking at the money, saying, well, how much money does a deputy director in the FBI mean? I would say probably looking at definitely over 200,000, maybe about 250,000, with a lot of benefits. But obviously it is a stressful job. It's like anything, even in the military. When you get to the general ranks, it's a full-time job, but it's also fun when you're the boss. It's one thing to work hard when you're a minion or a plebe. It's another to work hard when you're the king. You're the deputy director. It's long hours, it's hard work, but you're the king. But anyway, why did he quit? You don't think there's a correlation to money where he said, I want to ask you this. If he was not a podcaster, how much money do you think he's bringing in there? Easily he might be making $1 million US a year. He could be making a lot more than that. But I want you to ask yourself, if he wasn't a podcaster or having some other revenue stream that is very, very lucrative, would he have quit the deputy director or not? Because like I said, I quit and I was a normal special agent. He quit, he was the deputy director. And of course, unlike him, when I joined the FBI, I never said I was going to fight corruption. I joined the FBI thinking, wow, this is a phenomenal agency. I'm very lucky, this and that. He went in there thinking or saying it's corrupt and I'm going to fix the system. Well, he didn't fix anything and he quit. And would he have done that if he didn't have a multi-million-dollar podcast? I don't think he would. So what am I trying to say? The people serving our government are not doing it for duty, honor, country. Most of them are doing it because it's the best paycheck and pension of their life. This also correlates to Donald Trump. Like him or not, I still put Donald Trump as the best president in my life. If you disagree, then show me the president. The Democrat, I've mentioned many times, I think Ross Perot, maybe even Ron Paul. I get it. But generally speaking, notice Donald Trump never served in the government. He was a business guy. Probably sleazy, corrupt business person. Never served in the military, which again, good and bad. Again, he's a draft dodger, not exactly. But what I'm trying to tell you is, if you had a son, and that son was like, man, you are hardworking. Man, son, you are smart. You're like rocket science. And 3, son, you are a risk taker. Smart, hardworking risk taker. Do you think it would make sense if your son said this and you would agree and he says, Dad, I want to make a career in the government? Really? Now, if you go back to the 1950s, that's when the best FBI and CIA agents were. There's a reason for that. But I'm talking about now, right now. I'd probably say your son is going to say, Dad, I'm going to Wall Street. I'm going to go to Silicon Valley. I'm going to start an entrepreneur. You're not finding it in there. And there's reasons for that. But I'm just saying, you have to ask yourself, why did Dan Bongino quit? And is there a correlation if he was just a regular? Think about it. Why is Kash Patel still the director? I don't know what Kash Patel was doing, but I heard stories. It wasn't like he was making that much money. Meaning for Kash Patel, this could be, and let's face it, it's threat to the FBI. It is the best job for him. Now you might say, but what about Donald Trump? He was making billions or whatever, millions, you get it. He was a rich businessman, and now he's the president. Public service. There you go, David. I'm going to counter you. Donald Trump was making a ton of money in the civilian world, and he took a paycheck. He took a pay cut. I believe the president makes about $400,000 US, and he's donated, which he deserves on the record for that. Supposedly, he's donated his entire salary to charity. He deserves, a positive record on that. But the counterpart that you're going to say is, well, that doesn't make sense to your point, David. He's a rich business person, best of the best in the private sector. Why is he serving the government? Well, like I said, I could say good and stuff about Donald Trump. I would not doubt that Donald Trump, his family, and his oligarchs of his insider community could quite possibly be the most corrupt presidency in our history when it comes to that insider trading, that financial crime. For the same reason that we looked at Biden and Hunter Biden, which I'm not defending them at all. But I think probably Donald Trump, I mean, let's face it, you don't think you can weasel some really good financial deals for you, your family, and colleagues when you're the president of the United States? So you don't think the president put his business cap on that says, well, I'm in the business world, I can make this amount of money, but if I'm president, which is corruption, I can make even more money. Do I think that's happened? Absolutely. But then it comes back, and we'll go to the end. You'll see it's like, David, I don't see your point. You're saying the Democrats are corrupt. You're saying the Republicans are corrupt. So what's your point? The entire government's corrupt? I mean, pretty much. I mean, it's getting worse and worse. So that's why you're going to see when I finally tell you what the solution is, that's what you're dealing with. So when I say Donald Trump's the best president in my life, it is what it is, people. But I keep saying the best is yet to come. Let's keep going on another one here. And it just goes a little bit with the FISA. Let's just talk about it a little bit.
But it sometimes sweeps up information. FISA Section 702 collects information on foreign nationals communicating overseas, but it sometimes sweeps up information on Americans. That's the controversial part. The program has gotten a new lease on life, at least for now. Chief Congressional Correspondent Chad Pergram tells us where things stand tonight from Capitol Hill.
Bipartisan worry about FISA expiring.
If we go to bed tonight and we don't have that program in place.
You know what he's about to say. You've heard this so many times. Remember the war with Iraq? Because what happens is this, and I've said this many times, the security industrial complex. And when I say security, that would include military, that will include law enforcement, that will include intelligence, the security industrial complex, just like the military industrial complex. Where there's not a threat, then there's no money. We've also heard in the news, I don't know if you know it, the Southern Poverty Law Firm was funneling money to KKK and racism to build up. We know this thing. So there's always that threat. Remember 9/11, and I've said many times in my time in the FBI, what do I think happened in 9/11? I don't know. I've said many times too, it's politically incorrect, but I'm telling you, I don't believe we know the truth what happened in World War II. Notice the propaganda, but 9/11, no. But anyway, you have to use common sense. If there's not a threat, whether that threat is real, perceived, or fabricated, it's difficult for the government to persuade the American people to pay their taxes or whatever. So hence, Iran. Iran, again, I've never said I focus on Asia and China. I've never said I was a Middle East expert. Iran could be a legitimate threat for Israel. And what have I said? Well, then good luck to Israel. Let them do it. They could spend their own tax money. They could send their IDF, and then best of luck to them. I mean, I don't have a problem. People think I'm negative on Israel and the Jews. No. But is Iran, is that a security threat to America? No way. We got more important things in America. But you've heard this before. We're going to go back to it. But this what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word where they're calling about? Where they're always, they're the propaganda, where again, they're always the threat, the danger, and it works because fear is a powerful emotion. But anyway, let's keep going. So again, back to the FISA. If we don't, And there's clippets. I should have had it. If you go to my X feed, I save them where Donald Trump himself says, they illegally spied on me with FISA. This is before he became president. They illegally spied with me in FISA. FISA's unconstitutional. FISA's corrupt, this and that. And I said, yeah, Donald Trump, I agree. That was that was the main thing with my whistleblower. That's the main thing that's happening now. And all of a sudden, now he's president, everything, and no, we have to renew the FISA. That's a flip-flop. You don't think so? Major flip-flop right there. But anyway, let's go to FISA. But you got to remember, there's always, man, I'm forgetting the word that's called. It's like, I'm thinking like a hot pot. I don't know what the word is called. But anyway, they're always trying to say, if we don't do this, there's going to be danger. I mean, remember Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction, always like this. And it's a complete failure all the time. But not for the government, because remember, no wars, no money. They need this stuff, the intelligence. They need these programs to keep the money flowing. And I've said this many times. They don't want to neutralize the threat. They don't want to win the war. They don't want to lose the war. Just keep the wars going. Keep the threats going. Think about it. I'm the director of the FBI, and I'm here to report these threats. You know what the director is going to say. You know the threats facing America have never been as high as ever. Well, then what the fuck was the war on terror for 20 years? We were out of war on terror for 20 years, and we pumped so much money into it. Oh, my God. You thought the money, when I was in the FBI, our budget for national security, monopoly money. I would even ask these people, I'm like, don't we think we're spending a little too much money? What are you talking about? We're at war. You know, the war on terror. Spend it. So I think you all agree, if we were a private company on it, we would have been bankrupt a long time ago. So now the FBI director comes up, and you know this, the CIA, same thing. The threats have never been higher. America's at danger. Well, I thought the war on terror that we've been doing for 20 years, going into Iraq, going into Afghanistan, did we accomplish anything? Keeps going, people. Keeps going. If you think this war in Iran's the last one, you're crazy. It keeps going. What is that similar to? A little similar to the Roman Empire, the outstretched military arm. And what does it do? And we're conditioned to, I know we're talking, but we're conditioned to always say, military, thank you for their service. You don't need to thank me for my service for two reasons. One, Americans always thank military veterans for their service, but they don't really thank. I got so many, the responses that I got specifically from MAGA have been absolutely unpatriotic when I said, hey, I'm a military veteran, I need help. So I don't mind if you say, no, thank you. But I'm telling you, this whole thing that we've been programmed, thank you for your service, thank you for your service. I'm telling you, more and more Americans, middle class, are having a harder and harder time to put food on the table, your families, everything. And I'm telling you, these positions in the security realm, I'm not saying they're getting rich, but they are much higher level. I mean, FBI and CIA agents, they're anyway from 100,000 to 200,000. Military generals. I mean, if you compared them to the middle class, way above. But then the real money, oh, I know former CIA, FBI, and military people when they get into contracting. You ever hear of a guy named, I keep forgetting the Eric Prince? Oh, yeah, I know about Eric Prince and his company in Hong Kong working for the Chinese government. Then you get these guys in government contracting. Oh, my God. And we're talking also, obviously, with the U.S. government, your taxpayer money. Then the money, compared to the middle class, goes from really good, because let's face it, FBI agents, when you're making $150,000, you're not rich, but that's significantly above middle class. They're doing government contracting, now you're in the millions. I've got a West Point classmate. He's been what's called a Beltway bandit in Washington, D.C., multi-millionaire government contracting. But without a threat, he has no business. So it behooves him to keep the threats up. I've said this many times. It's the same thing like private prisons. I'm against private prisons. If you're going to send now, if it was with, I don't want to get into that, it's confusing. I was about to say with non-U.S. citizens. If you are a U.S. citizen and you get sent to jail, we want U.S. government to be responsible for you for good or for bad. You get a private prison there, now it's profits. And what did I say? It behooves them to have more prisoners because they get paid per capita. So if my prison has, we're just using it, has 100 people, prisoners, and I have 100 people in there, but if it could get to 200, I get more. And They may not be very tolerant about paroling people. So maybe they could get out early, the prisoners early. No, I'm a private prison. I want to keep them in there. So I think we all understand there's a conflict of interest when you take the private sector, put it into the government. What's the private sector? Their goal is not duty, honor, country. Their goal is shareholders make money. So don't fool yourself. You've got people in the government. Their salaries are pretty good, people, really good. Your tax money. But then they get out and they do contracting for the government. Again, need the threat. Their salaries are through the roof. And when you continue to say, thank you for your service, thank you for your service. I don't know what service are they giving you. I mean, we don't have freedom of speech anymore, but it is something for you to, before you say that, because I'm telling you, Americans through communism have been ingrained. Same thing, diversity is our strength, right? It's like diversity our strength. Why? Why is diversity our strength? Once you start articulating, it gets difficult. I can articulate in some ways how diversity is our strength. It's gone through the roof now. Diversity is no longer our strength. Unity is our strength. But we've been conditioned because we don't want to be racist. So we say diversity is our strength. Same thing with military. Thank you for your service. Okay. I just want to be a patriot. Thank you for your service. What service? What service? Well, you're protecting us from who? From the Iranians. I'm telling you, I wrote this in my book. If you're an American citizen and you're worried about your Christian faith, your European family, and your freedoms of speech or whatnot, I would be more worried about the U.S. government taking those away than China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. Anyone with common sense knows it. So you need to start thinking before speaking and saying, thank you for your service. Now, there are times, I mean, for instance, the FBI, your daughter gets kidnapped, right? And the FBI, that's what the FBI is in charge of, overseas kidnapping. And the FBI rescues your daughter, brings your daughter back. Absolutely. Handshake, maybe give them an apple pie and saying thank you. They might not be able to accept it, but it's an apple pie, obviously bribery. But you get my point. I could say thank you for your service. So there are things we can, but overall, the government as a whole has turned more into a burden, negative, than positive. They're taking more money than they need, and they're not doing positive things for it. This is why I've said maybe we should start defunding it, which obviously Donald Trump was not on that. He wants to increase the government. But just think about that next time in terms of, let's go to one thing right here. I want to see, I forgot what this is. Okay, let's keep playing. It's my bad.
I fear there will be blood on our hands.
History may judge the lapse of Section 702 authorities as one of the worst intelligence failures of our time.
Many Republicans were once leery of FISA, but believe a House-passed renew included guardrails after the FBI improperly used the program during an investigation which included President Trump's 2016.
The FBI, the FBI was abusing FISA from the start, and they're continuing to abuse FISA. If you think anything has changed, you're wrong. They abuse it. And again, we're focusing on U.S. citizens. Nothing's changed.
Campaign.
If you abuse FISA now, you are going to prison.
So this guy right there, let me show you. He's a congressman from Wisconsin, former Navy SEAL. I'm going to use some foul language. This guy's a piece of shit. He knows about me. His staff knows about me, and he's derelicting his duty. I know because you've been ingrained. You're like, but David, that guy's a Navy SEAL. They're the best of the best. Courage and honor and military service. But remember, you got to go back also to Donald Trump. Again, I talk negative and positive about Donald Trump. He said some negative things about military leadership before he was elected. And people said, how could he say that? And I was on X saying, he's right. Military leadership is gone down. So I know you're ingrained to say, but this guy, man, I'm forgetting this guy's name. I wrote him, Derek Van Holden. And I know you're ingrained. You're like, but that guy's a Navy SEAL. And you never disrespect the Navy SEAL. They're the best of the best. No, they're not. I'm telling you, overrated. He knows about me, and it's dereliction of duty. And he might lose the next coming election. Why? Because he's in Wisconsin, and the farmers are getting hammered with Trump's policies. And he's trying to do hardcore with Trump because he's a coward. He just wants to do whatever Trump does because he's afraid that if he doesn't follow Trump's orders, he's not going to get reelected. The problem is his constituents are not very happy with Trump's policies. He might lose too. But I'm telling you, I've never meant to come out on public to say negative things about the military. I've said in my book, the biggest accomplishment of my life is West Point. The West Point that we have today is not the West Point that we had decades ago. And military leadership across the board is substandard, immoral, and incompetent. Even you saw that from Donald Trump getting Pete Hegseth. But this guy is an absolute traitor, this guy. He knows about me 100%. Anyway, let's finish.
The Senate won't renew a 3-year extension.
We're calling on them to do the job, pass the House's bill, and get this done.
But there was. Senators compromised, passing a 45-day extension after FISA skeptics secured declassified information about how the feds misused FISA.
Every day that Section 702 is extended without meaningful reforms is a day that the program can continue to be abused.
You know, I would never, I've said this before. What you're going to start seeing is I would probably be considered far-right political, which I've said many times. If you go back to America, I've said two things. Before you call people far-right, remember these two things. If you go back to America 100 years ago, 100 years ago or more, the far-right is normal. That's number one point. Number two, if you go to non-Western countries, China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, India. I'm not saying those are your favorite countries in the world, but I am just saying far-right ideology in non-Western countries is the normal ideology. And I've said many times, when Donald Trump went to Beijing with all of his corporate CEOs to kiss ass and grift from Xi Jinping, what did I say? The same thing with the Democrats. I did a video on Gavin Newsom. He went to Beijing to kiss ass, same thing with Pelosi, for money. The Republicans do it too. So what I want to say is, before we get on our high horse of America to say we have morals, I don't think we do. I think it's all about the money in America. I mean, we would do deals with the devil. We would having deals with North Korea tomorrow. So if people say, what are exactly the morals and ethics of America? I don't know. We're a corporation. So it goes back to my point with the Democrats. Don't fool yourself. I believe I said many times, the battle is not between the left or the right or even races. But I don't want to be one of these kumbaya people. We generally are not aligned. But that leadership phrase, the enemy of my enemy, we all should know it. Think about it. World War II. Why did we align with the Soviet Union, the communists? Anyone with common sense should know that they were worse than the Nazi Germany. We were afraid that we were not going to win against them. Anyone knows, I've studied a lot. Eisenhower's a pretty interesting general to include Patton, and Patton disagreed with it. But at the end of the day, we were worried that we were going to lose the war with Nazi Germany, and we were terrified if Nazi Germany and possibly the Soviet Union aligned. So we just said, everyone knows that the alliance between the Soviet Union and America was purely strategic. So what am I saying on this point? Well, the far left, the far right, everything, I get it. We're not politically aligned. But I am telling you, the common enemy isn't us. What do I keep saying? It's the top 1%. The top 1%. And what did I keep saying? Our government, our politicians. So again, we don't have a president anymore. We have a CEO, Donald Trump. He's a CEO. If you study CEOs, and my time in leadership, it's very similar. A CEO and a general are very similar. But they're not acting in lines of leadership. He's acting like he's running a corporation. And what is the number one job of a CEO? Profits. Increase revenues and decrease costs. He's running America, which is a corporation, like a CEO. Who are the politicians? Management. So the key question is, who are the shareholders? Who's the chairman of the board? Those are the corporations. And so the part is I say this to the dumb MAGA people. They're like, you know who's ruining America? It's those homosexuals, or it's those pink-haired feminist women. I'm not saying I agree with those people, but if you think a bunch of homo boys and lesbian women are running America, you're a moron. But on the flip side, if you're a liberal and like, you know what's really destroying America? Those white supremacists. Those white supremacists are probably working in McDonald's in Alabama. They don't have as much power as you. The people that are probably controlling America in this are probably people with the money. follow the money. And the system that we have in America is the top 1% continue to get richer and richer and richer. And the top bottom 99% continue to get poorer and poorer and poorer. This is not capitalism. This is turning into an oligarchy where we're losing our freedoms. So I'm telling you, this is a statement where it's not kumbaya. I'm being very honest, and it's grounded in leadership. The number one enemy is not the left or the right. It's not the blacks or the whites or stuff like that. Even though I make it known, I don't believe multiracial societies work. I make it known. But at the same time, the number one enemies, the number one problems are not the people. It's those who control ourselves. And we have to look at the top 1%. And like it or not, Donald Trump, when he's a billionaire and he's part of the oligarchy class, it's very difficult for a guy like Donald Trump to say, I'm a man of the people. I'm a man of the people. When you're a billionaire and now you're driving the country in a direction that is not America first, it's very difficult. And I believe this America first has been so adulterated now that it's probably American corporations first versus American citizens first. So Trump and his rich kids who've never served in the military, along with Donald Trump, who's a draft dodger, it's very difficult for him to say. But at the same time, if you say, all right, David, who's better than Donald Trump? What do? I come up empty-handed. I left the country, but I'm going to give you the answer later on. But notice I didn't say anything about, well, we need to, I don't know, AOC or Gavin Newsom. And no, I'm not a fan of J.D. Vance. I'm not a fan of Marco Rubio at all. But again, we have to ask ourselves, then what's the solution, David? I said it before. We'll keep going. But here, let's go to one thing here. And the reason why I want to say this is I predict the American empire is going to collapse. It's in history. Now, one of the things that's different about me and other people is you could do this with investments. It's one thing, I mean, we'll use crypto now. Crypto is going down, but it's one thing to say, hey, you really need to invest in this. You need to invest in this stock. You need to invest in this crypto. You need to do this. They could be right or wrong. But a good question is, have you invested your own savings into this? And if they said, actually, I've invested zero money into that, what does it do? It pulls you back. So wait a minute, you just said this is a good investment. You're telling me you didn't invest any of your money in it? No. What about the opposite? He's like, I invested everything into this. He still could be wrong, but it is. What about me? I left America in 2010. It's not easy, people. It's not easy. And I didn't want to. I never left America. I said, screw you. I just said, this country is going to a revolution. It is what it is. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But because I left in 2010, and that's also why they try to paint me or us as the doomers. I've been saying this since 2010 when I left. Well, I mean, I started in 2005, but when I left the country in 2010, that's probably pretty good evidence there that says, yeah, way back then, I was already predicting. So they're trying to get you that there's these new doomers now. It's just like a rage. It's the flavor of the month, like America's going to collapse. Not me. And since I left in 2010, it's gotten worse and worse. We're going to do this clip. Now, this clip is pretty nostalgic, and it's pretty interesting. And also, by the way, it's about the English Empire. What most people don't know is not today's English people, but English people or British people, most of them have German DNA. It's an interesting story. It's also about America, but we should respect our European forefathers. To understand it, a lot of times, this is during the Roman Empire, the Roman times, many of what's called the Saxons, the Jutes, and the Angles. This would be northern Germany, to include Denmark. They actually immigrated, or you could say not immigrated, but they invaded England. And even if you look at the British royal family, a lot of German blood in there. So what am I saying? I think we could agree that the British Empire was awe-inspiring. Now, I've changed my mind, though. We're going to do this because what I want to do is I want to relate this to America. Now, I have changed my mind that this thing called colonies, the British Empire, is looked upon negative. I get that. I'm sorry to say I've just changed my mind, though, living in Asia. Why? Two colonies come to my mind, and I'll do videos later. One is Hong Kong, and one is Singapore. They were both British colonies. And I could tell you something. The local Chinese people, these would be the the Chinese in Singapore. Obviously, there's Malay and Indian, but most of them are of the Chinese ethnicity in Singapore. And obviously, the Hong Kongese are Chinese. They are unbelievably grateful. Take it from me, grateful that the British Empire chose those two places to become colonies. Again, we can talk negative about the empires, but it's done amazing things. But what I want you to do is see this British Empire. It's a short clip, very short. It's like a minute. But I want you to think to your mind and say, oh my God, there used to be a British Empire. The British Empire, by the way, collapsed after World War II. That's what they had to use their resource again against Germany. So even though Germany lost, guess who else lost? The British Empire. But what I want you to think of is we forget history in America. This was an enormous, powerful empire, the British Empire. It's gone, people. So what I'm saying is, you don't think that could be the same thing with the American Empire? Absolutely. Same thing. Interesting clip. We'll play this real quick. But just think of history, where history was. Remember, now it's the US dollar. Before it was the pound, the British pound. The British pound is still there. And I'm saying the British is still a legitimate country, if you could say that. It's fallen apart. You know, it's not crumbled, but it ain't the British Empire anymore. That's for sure. I mean, America's the boss for sure. I mean, the British Empire is over. Just think about this and think what happens history. And what is history? Time and pressure. Time and pressure. That's what history is. And it's happening before your eyes in America.
Britain was the most powerful nation. For 200 years, Britain was the most powerful nation in the world. From Canada to India, from Australia to Nigeria, from the Caribbean to South Africa, the British Empire once ruled over a third of the people on Earth.
It's pretty amazing. I could tell you something. In Hong Kong, I know people are like, you know, evil, the evil white people, evil. I know, that's what you're talking. I'm telling you. Hong Kong, I should do a quick story about Hong Kong. We'll save for another video. They are extremely happy that the Brits chose Hong Kong to, yes, be a colony. Now, how's Britain today? I don't know. I'm not much of an expert on Britain. I don't live in Britain, but
going to be a London, everybody in London is going to be a mix of just one brown, like a light brown, like all the browns are gonna just, every race is just gonna mix. You know, when you mix the whole palette and just mix brown.
That the Jews want to exterminate the European race. Richard Coudenhove Kalergi was funded by the Jewish bankers Rothschild and Warburg in 1925, in which he stated that the Jews are a master race, and then to invite in Africans, Middle Easterners, and Asians to dilute the blood of Europeans through miscegenation to the point where they became a degenerate mixed race. And then at that point, these people would no longer have any sense of nationhood, and the ancient Jewish messianic prophecies of world rule out of Jerusalem, with Jews maintaining their nationhood and their national status, it would fulfill the Jewish messianic prophecies that the Jews could then rule the world. And this was completely in line with what Nikolai had written in 1917 and has manifested itself recently with the invasion of immigrants from Africa, from the Middle East, and from Asia into Europe, America, and Australia. And they are deliberately setting about to genocide the white race and destroy all sense of nationhood and of national heritage and national culture.
One of the things I was very surprised is how much hate mail I've received from MAGA. I focus on MAGA because that's where I'm more politically aligned. I'm more of a nationalist. So I don't really communicate much with the liberals. I don't have a problem with it, but I'm just more, and I was a Trump supporter. How much hate mail I get. This is from military veterans, conservatives, MAGA, to say, you're a traitor, you left America. You're a quitter, you're a coward. I wonder what it would have been like if I would have started my social media. Now, this would have been a lie, but if I would have said, emphasize Jewish American, and I went to Israel. So instead of going to China or now Hong Kong, it's like, and really emphasize, I'm a proud Jewish American, and I just wanted to leave America and go to my homeland of Israel. I wonder if these MAGA people would be like, you're such a traitor. You left them. Oh, you're in Israel. Okay. Oh, no. That's our ally. That's good. But there is something going on, and I think we could all agree that not all. We've heard this before. We get it. Not one person can talk about their whole race, the Chinese, and yes, living in China now, you become very racial, and so not one white person speaks with all white people, black person. We get that. I now on social media and my time starting in mainland China, I have awoken. There is something going on with the Jews in Israel. Growing up as a Jewish kid in New York, even though I'm mixed Jewish, I never thought about it. I thought it was a conspiracy, this and that. But there is something going on, because even the Chinese will just flat out talk to me about what's going on. They're like, why is America a Jewish colony? Why is it controlled by Israel? And I look at them like, do you see that? They said it's absolutely normal. They see it. Here's another clip. It's just very strange on what's going on.
Just ask forgiveness for the anti-Semitism. Father God, as a German and European, I just ask forgiveness for the anti-Semitism all around that is growing, and we repent on behalf of it, and we bless Israel.
Father, forgive us for the way we've turned our back on Israel and not defended the Jewish people.
Lord, please forgive us for all the things that we did not support Israel. We went against Israel. Lord, please forgive us.
Would you turn the hearts of our leaders in both government and the church, along with the people of our nation, back to honoring you and your word, so that as a nation we would once again stand with, support, and be a friend to Israel and to the Jewish people.
Lord, I especially want to pray that you will rise up a young generation that will stand for you, that will stand firmly for your word, for your truth, and will stand firmly with Israel and support Israel.
We are here because of you, God of Israel. Today I stand here in the Knesset of Israel. I say Korean government will stand with Israel.
Okay. You've probably seen these before, a lot of these propagandas. And I've said many times, I don't have a problem with Israel. I like Jewish people, but there is just something very strange. And if you're going to be MAGA and say America first, then you need to be able to say America first, not Israel first. We could be friends. I mean, we should definitely be friends with our European. I don't like what we're doing in Greenland, So I've always said we should have good alliances with countries and cultures and people that are similar to us. And I would put Israel there too. But I've said many times, if we're going to look what the FBI is the #1 lead agency to oversee, and that's agent of a foreign power, because it's the insider threat, the domestic threat. You're telling me Israel is not up there? I would say, what country has the most foreign influence? What foreign country has the most influence on America? And people say it's China, it's Russia. I'd probably say it's Israel. And so I would just politely say, I mean, there's some, I won't say it on there, there's some interesting stories with the FBI in Israel that we won't go into, but I'm just saying, I don't have a problem with Israel. What I have a problem with is the American government not putting America first and just not doing Israel. But we won't, I've done other videos on this, but I think it's going to get more and more mainstream, just like we talk about collapse it. This influence that Israel has on America, something's just not right. But I don't have a problem with Israel. Go for it. Have fun. You want to go to wars? I mean, this whole thing, we'll get into the next subject, but I think to most Americans, if you say, do you support Israel or do you support Palestine? I think most Americans could say, I could care less, either one of them. I just support America. Just, you do what you got to do. You Jews, the Palestine, you figure that out. We're in America. We're falling apart. My wife's about to get a divorce. My son wants to transition to a transsexual. My daughter wants to go on OnlyFans. And I'm about to get fired from my job and foreclose on my house. I have enough problems in America right now. Our country is falling apart. Let's put America first. But the same thing I've said, Taiwan, Beijing, Ukraine, Russia, Iran, Israel, you guys do whatever you got to do. But it seems we are constantly, and there seems to be obviously favoritism with Israel, where we're putting foreign countries, foreign entities above American citizens who pay our taxes. Just me, I mean, we'll see. I left America, I don't pay taxes, but this Israeli Jewish influence, we've got to get to the point with free speech that we can at least start talking about it. Just start talking about it. Anyway, what I want to go here really quick is this is with Tucker Carlson. And this is what I keep saying in mainstream, how this is becoming mainstream now, that something is going wrong with our country. I said this in 2010 when I left, but you got to remember 2010, if you started saying, I think civil war, I think collapse, I think revolution, I think people looked at me like I was nuts. Now this stuff is becoming mainstream. And I'm telling you, we're going in this direction.
To say Poland, if you heard about a country, let's just say Poland, under the Soviet occupation of 1971, and you were told that in Soviet-occupied Poland, there was no privacy whatsoever. There was not one place you could go where you were not surveilled by your government. Even in your own bedroom, people were listening to you. Even when you got in your car, your sanctuary, a machine began to lecture you, hector you like a neurotic girlfriend about wearing your seatbelt. Slow down. And if you didn't, the vehicle would take control away from you, exert autonomy, and strip you of yours, and just act in the way it decided best. You would have no privacy, and you would have no autonomy. If you heard about a place like that, you would say, well, that's the definition of totalitarian. But you would be describing America right now, before AI. So it takes a little bit of mental effort to get perspective on the world you live in and how far from the promise it is and how much it has changed, how totally unacceptable it is, how totally contrary to human thriving it is. It's no surprise, given those facts and many more like them, that SSRI usage is beyond belief. The suicide rate is unacceptable. People are miserable under our current system. That system is called liberal democracy. There are very few Americans who don't support liberal democracy, including me. I support liberal democracy. It's our birthright, liberal democracy. It's the greatest thing we have. Liberal meaning respecting of human rights, the rights with which we were born, and democracy meaning we own the system and we put our representatives in office by voting for them. We're in control. We're the shareholders here. Liberal democracy. But the truth is, our democracy is neither liberal nor democratic. It doesn't represent people and it doesn't acknowledge fundamental human rights. It bulldozes them. And everybody on some level knows this, which is to say it can't continue because nobody believes in it anymore. Some of us are hoping for a peaceful resolution to this crisis, but it is a crisis. When the government begins to actively harm the people it supposedly serves, it's reached the end. I mean, it may take a while to end, but it will end. Because that doesn't make any sense. It's intolerable. It would take a lot of technology to force people to obey a system like that. And even then, it couldn't go on forever. And this one won't. So as you think about this, it gets pretty dark pretty fast. The system you grew up with, the one you were taught to love, the one about which there was at one point a lot to love, is going away because it just doesn't work. And historians will debate why it didn't work in the end. Were the flaws inherent to it? Was it bad leadership? Was it the baby boomers? Who knows? Wiser heads will determine the answer. But in the meantime, it's enough to know that it can't continue. And that's one of the reasons that you're hearing an awful lot of dark muttering about revolution, violent and otherwise, on the internet. And
so again, this is the point, we'll go back to it. This is the point that I'm saying. They're going to try, and again, I've actually found Tucker Carlson to be better and better. I think probably one, he's got a lot of money, so he doesn't need money to work for the corporations, number one. Two, I believe when you get older, I'm 50 years old, when you get older and Tucker's that, you just start saying stuff, what it is. And I think maybe there is a moral Christian code in them. But the point being is I say again, don't be fooled by possibly the propaganda, which is also with MAGA, which is this would be the Dan Bongino, where he would paint people like me as the gloomers, the people that are saying the system's going to end. I left America in 2010. I started thinking this in 2005. So the thought that I'm on some new bandwagon, and I said, I wrote all my congressmen and senators, I mean, literally all of them. I mean, almost every single one, the government. This was back in 2022, saying I would like to work out in private. Our systems aren't working anymore. And I think in that letter, for whatever they thought about it, I said, this system is going to collapse. We're going to get to revolution. You don't spy on people behind their backs. You face them. I mean, I could do more stories. We're going to finish it, but think about, let me just do this a little bit. We are not, our government, the reason why we're changing is the people in America have changed. We're not the same American men that it used to be. So this is the example the FBI has done to me now. And I've got many examples in my case, but here's one. Picture an example where you probably grew up, and if you had a good father, he would have taught you this. They're in school, someone's talking behind your back to everyone, destroying your reputation. This is in some way spying on you, but of course the FBI is a lot higher. And you heard that the person behind your back is whatever, Billy. We'll just say Billy. And you confront Billy. You say, Billy, have you been on my back, spying on me, telling me bad stuff? And Billy is too afraid to face you. And he sort of runs off. That's like the FBI. Think about the FBI. Again, this is literally my situation and so many other Americans. The only lucky thing with me is I know they're spying on me. I'm telling you, if you're an American citizen or even a foreigner, it doesn't matter, and you're particularly living in America and the FBI is spying on you, there is less than 1% chance you'll ever know. It never would happen. Again, because I was located overseas, the FBI had to use what's called extraordinary measures and leave trail. And it was easier, much easier for me to find out. You'll never find out. But picture this scenario, because it just shows the cowards of this system. Because again, there is no way, shape, or form you could define my situation as anything other than the system is not working. Our government's corrupt. They all know about it, and they're hiding it. Picture this. I know this is kind of a comical example, but just this. You and your wife are eating dinner at your dinner table, and your wife says, "Do you hear some noise in the bushes outside the window?" And you look outside the window, your own home, and you see two Huckleberry Bozo FBI agents behind bushes trying to listen in on you. You say, "Hey, you FBI," and they run off. And they run off. And then the next day you go to the FBI office, this is comical, go through it and say, "Listen, I think you guys were spying on me. If you have a problem with me, you face me man to man and you tell me what it is." And what does the FBI say? "No comment. No comment. Don't know what you're doing. I'm not going to confirm, not going to deny." Now your tax money is paying with these people. Then you go back the next night with your wife having dinner again. And your wife second night says, "Are you kidding me? I think I hear the same noise." Sure enough, you go out and you see the same two bozos, FBI agents, hiding in the bushes. And you say, "Listen, you two bozos, I see you. Stop doing it. Face me." And they run off. It's very cowardice-like. And that's what's happening. I'm telling you, Leadership 101, people have this fear of these alpha strong men. And I get it. There could be dangers to them. But generally speaking, take that strong alpha male any day over these weak men. Why? Because weak men are afraid of the truth. They will hide. They will do stuff in the back. They're afraid of confrontation. It's the same thing if you met a man, you're like, "Hey, have you ever gotten fist fights before?" And you're like, "I'm not proud of it, but I've gotten in fights here and there. In fact, sometimes I kind of like to get in fights." I'm not saying that's good. Versus the other man, "I've never gotten in a fight in my life and I never will. I'll run from every fight in my life." Because what happens is weakness increases fear. An increase of fear will increase unethical behavior. Unethical. I still remember this, a story in World War II that was pretty funny. My father told me, and when I was at West Point, I studied again. This was when, it wasn't General Patton, though I'm sure General Patton would have these stories. But this is sort of, and I should do a video of the difference between a leader and a spy. We have this nostalgia in America over spies and this and that. It's not, what Hollywood is portraying the spy is not really as appetizing as what it should be, where leadership is a lot of times foundation is a military officer. If you think of a military officer, that is kind of the bread and butter of leaders. Spies aren't. Anyway, the story, because I want to go back to the video, it's very simple. Post-World War II, the American forces and the Russian, or you should say the Soviet Union forces, were together, and they were having, I guess you could say, a celebration dinner in Germany. I'm forgetting the names. I got to go through two stories. Anyway, it comes to where there's an American general, and the Russian general sends his aide and says to the American general, the Russian general wants to do a toast with you. And again, I don't know if this is, I think it was Patton who said this. Anyway, the story was, you tell the general, I think he's a fucking idiot. Something like that. Very impolite. Because that's what the general thought about him. Make no doubt about it. The Russians, the Soviet Union, were not exactly exemplary. We only allied to them specifically for the Germans. So anyway, the Russian interpreter was like, I cannot tell the Russian general that. I mean, it's unpolite. It's not. He goes, you tell him that. And he goes and tells the Russian general. The interpreter tells the Russian general what the American general said. And the Russian general was taken back. And he says, well, you go tell the American general, I think he's a fucking idiot. Something like that. Then they told the American general. And guess what the American general said? That sounds good. You know what the Danish say? Put the fish on the table. What does that mean? You get out in the open. So then he told the American general, he's like, okay, that's good. Now I can have a toast with him. Because he knows exactly what I think, and I know what he thinks, vice versa. We're not playing any child's games. Now we could do a toast. Now, obviously, that culture is the exact opposite of espionage. You keep your secrets. You don't reveal your secrets. It's very feminine in nature. Believe it or not, leadership in general has a very masculine energy. Espionage, women are just, I cannot tell you how many women want to have sex with a spy. Women are just, if you go from the FBI to the CIA, there's more women in the CIA than it is in the FBI. It's just that, and you'll find a lot of FBI agents. There's a lot, my supervisor was married. You'll see a lot of CIA married to FBI. And 9 out of 10 times, the FBI is the guy and the CIA is the girl. And so the point is espionage, believe it or not, has much more feminine energy. It is what it is than leadership. So for the same reason, the FBI doesn't want to confront me. It's very cowardice. It's very feminine. That's who they are. But if you think these people now in our government are just hard charger leaders, those days are done. Anyway, back to the story. You're going to see it. It's going to get worse in America. And what's interesting is, again, Tucker Carlson, which is definitely mainstream now, you are going to start seeing this more and more mainstream. Stuff like civil war, collapse, revolution. And I say again, do not be fooled. They're trying to make it feel like this is some new age propaganda. Not with me. Same reason why my story is so bad for the American government. Another part of my story. You're telling me the Boeing Corporation, which is part of the military-industrial complex, illegally terminates an American military veteran, and I was up for promotion, meaning I was a good employee. As soon as I became an ethical whistleblower, they fired me. They replaced me with a Chinese national who's in charge of their cyber information security, everything in China. Doesn't make sense, people. Why? Because what did I say? What's more powerful than the government? These corporations. And I'm telling you, these corporations are selling out America, not just for China. They will sell out America to anyone, the highest bidder. And they don't want my story coming out. I'm not going to compare it to Pat Tillman, but you know, these stories that are anti-American, it's a cover-up. It happens all the time. But the good thing, I like Tucker Carlson, it's starting to come out in the open that this is no longer a feeling. It's like an alcoholic. We have a problem in America. As soon as this video is over, I'm going to come up again with the solution or my leadership advice.
Everyone talking about that should remember what that actually looks like. Civil wars are the ugliest of wars, and they tend to go on for a very long time, and innocents die in huge numbers. So that is not an outcome that you want if you can help it. But what are the options? Well, out of nowhere the other day, we saw a clip of a man in Britain offering some measure of hope, not because the current system can continue, it can't, and it won't, but because there are options that are not based on hate and division and violence, that are instead based on decency and kindness. And in fact, we haven't always lived this way. Our current system is a fairly new invention. People didn't live this way 200 years ago. In fact, they couldn't imagine it. That man is a man called Frank Wright. Now, he was caught on camera by a reporter walking down the street in the UK, and the reporter asked him a question, how do you think Britain's going? How are things going? And he gave a pretty remarkable answer for a man on the street interview. Here's part of it.
So what does finished look like? What does finished look like? Finished looks like an economic collapse. Finished looks like spending all your money on foreign wars when nothing works in the country. Finished looks like you can't get a job for being competent. There's no sanity even in recruitment. We have a competency crisis because for increasingly ideological and insane reasons, employment opportunities, even training opportunities are restricted. There's one news story after another about why, for political reasons, we're doing mad things that bankrupt the country, that basically park people's careers, that exclude talented people of genuine principle from any area of influence whatsoever. And taken collectively, this is the politics and economics of national suicide. So it has to stop.
So who is that guy, we thought? But we shouldn't have been that surprised, because if you're on social media, you've had similar experiences probably many times. You'll be reading something like Twitter or Instagram, and there's a lot of garbage and porn and lunacy and bots, and there's a lot of ugliness and pointlessness and time-wasting material. But in the middle of all of that, occasionally you'll run across somebody writing something beautiful and true and perfectly expressed, and you'll think to yourself, why haven't I heard of this person? And what is he doing posting on X at 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon? Doesn't this guy have a job? And the answer is, he may not. Our system is so inimical, so hot.
I've said this many times. I was the heavyweight captain of the Army boxing team, West Point boxing, and don't get me wrong, I think it's great for men to get into the gym, to get into shape, to learn how to fight. But we have to be honest. And I did stories of this on the military. The biggest fear or courageous act that you're going to have to perform as a man is probably not some physical feat like fighting. Even though I still think, get in shape, don't be fat, stuff like that. But we're living in a world right now that probably the most courageous act that you can do is speaking. Why? Because if you say the wrong thing, besides censorship, you could be fired from your job. You may even go to prison, especially if you speak outside or raise. You get what I'm saying. But I'm not diminishing the importance of physical fitness for men and eat a good diet and stop smoking. We get that, or hopefully do. I mean, we don't. I mean, sperm counts are dropping, plastics in our food, GMOs, I mean, fast food. But the point is I still believe the most courageous act isn't thousands of years ago where we were fighting a saber-toothed tiger, where we had to use our muscles and might. We're probably living in a world now that the most dangerous thing you can do is just speak. And if you speak outside the boxes, people, I've always said this before, our government is starting to exponentially quicken down a certain pace of a globalist regime. And if you start speaking, because it is true in China, there's no doubt about it, China does not have free speech. And if you speak negatively about the regime, absolutely. I'm not going to argue with that. But it is getting that way also in America, to include all this other stuff. We can't talk about racism, we can't talk about feminism. But I say again, probably the most courageous act now, or dangerous, we'll say dangerous act you could do now, probably has nothing to do with your muscles. It probably has to do with your voice. That's dangerous right now. And it's always good to figure out what is the most taboo topic that you cannot talk about. Even with the government, where are we going in the government that they're most afraid of, or what topics? That entity that you cannot talk about is probably who controls you.
Hostile to inherent superiority, to honesty, to truth itself, but also to cleverness and creativity, that it has systematically excluded some of the brightest people in our country and in Britain from gainful employment. The man you just saw, Frank Wright, who you never have heard of. How do we know that? Because he doesn't have a job. That's why. That man should be in a leading position within the intellectual realm in Great Britain. He should be a noted public philosopher, obviously. And you will definitely think that after you hear the hour-long interview we just did with him, which we're going to play in just a moment. But he's not doing any of those things. Again, he's not really employed. Why? Because like a lot of people like him, he can't get a job. Not just because he's the wrong color and gender, which he is, not just because he's not gay, which he's not, but because he's honest and smart. And honest and smart people have a kind of irrepressible habit of questioning, why are we doing this? Of asking inconvenient questions. And people like that are not welcome in the oligarchy. Why would they be? They're troublemakers.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing about leadership. And I've said many times, if I did another book, it would be entitled, Why Not to Be a Leader. But even in high school, I was voted, my personality was the most argumentative, and I was voted as class pest. And even now, I was ranked number 2 at leadership at West Point. I won leadership at Harvard, at Switzerland, in my business school. But it's like that. People, I'm gonna do, even when I was in the FBI, they said, you're asking too many questions. Don't fool yourself. The FBI and the CIA, they want a lot of times, if you're at the field agents, to be what's called drones. Just follow the orders. And I'm not doing this because I'm telling you, in many times, even with Boeing, boy, if I would have done it before, I would have just shut my mouth. It was a nice company, Boeing, career, everything. But there are people, and I think it's DNA. It's just in our DNA to say when things are right or wrong, to speak out. But I could tell you something. It's very dangerous. I'm going to give you just a quick leadership snippet here, and then we'll go back. And this is something, because you'll never hear that. First of all, if you're in college or if you're in a corporation or whatever, and you're taking a leadership class, 99% chance it's not leadership. They're not. I'm going to give you an example. You're in IBM, Coca-Cola, and you're like, this is great. I just made management and I'm going to a leadership. You're probably learning management. You're learning, and there's nothing wrong with management. Management is very important. To be a manager is very resourceful. And if you're a boss, to have good managers, it's great. But do not confuse, and I write this many times in the book, there's a difference between a manager and a leader. There's nothing wrong with managers, but they are not the same. So that's the first thing. You're in some type of class, you're like, this is a class on leadership. No, it's not. It's out management. I'm going to give you an example. When you're applying for a job, now remember, a lot of jobs may not require leaders. Okay, it is what it is. In fact, the FBI, they say they're trying to hire leaders. They're not. They're not. They're looking for FBI and CIA agents that actually are not leaders. They're looking generally for followers, people that can manage. And here's why. What do you manage? They don't even look to people as people. When you have your agent, your asset, your informant, that person is a resource. It's not even looked upon as a people. Even in our military, we train West Pointers, your people. Treat your soldiers like your children, like you're a father. Those days are done. Our military now is management. Oh, whoops. Soldiers died in battle, whatever. It's management. Everyone knows that. Go talk to enlisted soldiers, present or past, and ask them, what do they think of their military leadership? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. And I'm telling you, I'd be surprised if they would give you a positive rating. Remember, and we're going to go, there's one more last video. It's a West Point grad. Another reason why my story is not coming out. The the FBI recruited West Point graduates to spy on me. Remember West Point, duty on our country? They took money from the FBI. Now, of course, they recruited people who knew me, my friends, my colleagues, the people I trusted. They paid them money to lie to me and spy on me. What type of evidence did they gather? Nothing. I mean, I'm sure they gathered a lot of, I made a lot of statements that were very politically incorrect, talking about the January 6th, but any evidence of national security, none. But these were the West Pointers. So I make it known. Don't even think that I'm trying to toot the horn of military leadership or West Point. It used to be premier, not anymore. I'm going to give you a leadership question. You don't get these anymore. Picture yourself interviewing for a job. I'm the hiring manager, and I want to hire a leader. Some jobs, I don't want to be a leader. There are some jobs I just want a follower. There are some jobs I just want a manager. So you got to remember, put this in context. This is a job I want a leader. But you got to remember, we use that leadership term everywhere. Leadership, come to this school, learn leadership. Join Coca-Cola, where we're a bunch of leaders. They're not. So you got to remember, there's a lot of propaganda and lies in this, like our politicians are leaders. No, but this is a leadership question. Hi, John Smith. Glad that you applied for this job. You want this job. Now, this job requires a high level of leadership abilities. Are you a leader? Yes, sir, I am. Whatever. And we go through it. This is one of the questions I'm going to ask. I want to know your time where you disobeyed the orders, where you broke the regulations, where you broke the law. How many questions are you ever going to get like that during an interview? None. Break regulations, not follow the policy, break the law. What do you think? I'm a criminal? This job's not. That's leaders. 2 points. Point number one, make sure you remember this. America, who's probably the best leader in America, go for our founding fathers. George Washington. You would not put George Washington and our founding fathers as possibly some of the premier leaders. They founded America. Guess who they were? They were domestic terrorists. They were traitors. They were criminals. They were violent men with guns. Talk about white men with guns. They were in some way, shape, or form everything in many ways we're taught in America to not do. They used violence as a solution. They broke the law. They were traitors. That you go on and on and on. But they won, and now they're considered to be great leaders. I want you to remember this phrase or this thing before we end. I've always said this before: legality and morality. It's very similar to the chicken and the egg. Which came first? Our society. Now, our society is built on laws. Where did those laws come from? Many times it's come from morality. But then legality can affect morality, and it really is. It gets blurred. If you are a manager and you're hiring for a manager position, legality comes first. I am not going to hire a manager who thinks on his own. Welcome to Corporation ABC. This is our corporate policy. These are regulations, and God forbid, this is the law. What do you want to have a lawsuit against our company, a criminal investigation? You as a manager will follow the policy, the regulations, and the law to the T. Your job is to increase efficiency and effectiveness. Do you understand? Now, remember, I'm not saying this in a negative way. Managers are vital. Now we're going to go leaders. Leaders. Morale. You've heard this before too about the Nazis, and I've said this many times. I don't believe we know the truth about World War II, but you've heard this story. The Nazis said, I was just following the orders. And again, we're going to focus on the officers, but we know that's an excuse. So in America, when you're looking at high-level positions, CIA, FBI, West Pointers, do you really, because your tax money's put them in as leaders, do you think they should have an excuse of, I was just following the orders? Now, in the military, if you're a private, if you're an enlisted soldier, that is, I'll buy that for $1. I was following the orders of my officers appointed over me. But if you're an officer, a second lieutenant or higher, or high levels in the position of a government, or obviously politicians, we're not interested in legality. We're interested in morality first. The problem in America is we're losing morale. We don't even know. We used to be a Christian nation. We're not anymore. But if you are a leader, morality comes first. We don't have this concept anymore. Why? Because we are a corporation. It's all about the money. Just make money, make money, make money. And if they do break the laws, It's not because it's the morally right thing to do. It's just ethics. I mean, they will do whatever unethical thing they can or whatever illegal thing they can just to make money. We know that. But if you're going to raise children, at least for leader, this is old school West Point. Those days of West Point are done. Why is that? Because what is West Point ultimately meant to do? West Point is considered the premier leadership institute of the world. When if you look at the military and you are looking for leadership in our entire military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, it comes from West Point. It's the oldest military academy in our nation. It is the key to the continent by General George Washington. We lose West Point, we will lose the war. It was so vital to the American colonies. And that was where the first academy came. And that is where leadership has its birthplace in America. I cannot tell you how much American is West Point is. At least the good old days, not anymore. And you have to train morality. Here's why. And that's why West Point graduates, we are engineered by our DNA ready for civil wars, revolutions, and collapse. Here's why. You know as well as I do that if the society collapses, there's no more policemen. There's no more functioning. Two things are going to happen to people. One, they'll just become combat effective. You know that. They'll have a mental breakdown. Society, where are the police? Where's this? And they don't know how to function because mommy and daddy are not telling them what to do. And then there's other people saying, are you telling me there's no more law enforcement? There's no more big father government looking over me? No. Oh man, it's time for me to rape women and pillage and plunder. So you've got some evil people. The only reason they're doing good is truth. Big Brother's watching. And then you've got other people that are just drones. They're like, I need someone to tell me what to do. I need someone to tell me what to do. But if you're a leader and all of a sudden you're living now in anarchy, it's business as usual because you never did your job anyway for legality. And you're able to do the harder right over the easier wrong when nobody's watching. Why? Because that's what war is. When you are truly in war, because every war is illegal, whether you invade, they invade, whatever, it's always illegal. So when we always say Russia invaded Ukraine, that's illegal. Okay, I'm not going to argue with it. We invaded Afghanistan, it's illegal. We invaded Iraq, it's illegal. We are now bombing Iraq. Everything is illegal. So when you're truly in war, you'll look around many times. You as a military officer with your folks, you realize there's not much legality here. We are at war. So you have to always rest on morality. And it's not something that comes up out of the blue. Now, a lot of that morality came from Christian beliefs. So it's not something you can just switch on and switch off or take a couple classes. It usually starts from mom and dad all the way through. But that's where you know leadership, where it's like, because ultimately at the end of the day, I am going to die. You will die. I will die. Sooner or later, this life will end. And the great creator will ultimately judge me. And he's not going to judge me and say, well, you followed the rules. You did what's legal. God will judge on morality. Now, if you're an atheist, and I support atheists to keep people like me on the fence, to keep people like me, questioning and do it. But I'm not an atheist. I never was. I never will be. But I'll buy atheism for $1 and I'll allow you to have your place at the table. But I'm telling you, in leadership, there needs to be a solid foundation of morals and ethics. We don't have it. I've been to one of the best business schools in the world. And if you think corporations are cornerstones of ethics, you are out of your mind. For the same reason that these corporations will go to China, they'll go to North Korea, they'll go, communism, any of this stuff that we say is bad in America, these corporations will do business with anyone. There is no ethics. And I'm telling you, it is one of the reasons that America is going down. We have lost it. We are no longer a Christian nation. We are no longer a European nation, and we are losing our freedoms to include freedom of speech. It's going to get worse. But I'll leave it on that. There is nothing wrong, managers. They are so vitally important. But their foundation is policy, regulation, and law. I hired you as a manager not to break policy, regulation, and law, to follow it, but to turn that efficiency and effectiveness to the best. Leaders, though, I'm not hiring you to follow. But if you break it, because it's risky. Leadership is very risky and dangerous because you start breaking law. You don't think George Washington and the founding fathers, what would have happened to them if they would have lost the war? They probably would have been hung as traitors. Leadership is a dangerous business. That's why most people that are like, this is great, I'm in this leadership course and I'm going to really learn to be a leader. Are you learning about danger? Is this, no, that's not leadership. It's not leadership. You're not. It's the same thing our military generals send these soldiers off the war. They come back in body bags and the generals are like, no big deal. I'm going to go get a cup of tea and I'm going to get a raise. They don't care. It's purely management. There's nothing on the line. There's no skin on the skin in the game. Let's keep going back to this.
Because they're disobedient. The problem is that when you take people like that out of a system, the system loses all creativity. The system loses the ability to continue itself, to make anything interesting, to have enlightened ideas, and in the end, even to be decent. It becomes a machine. And that's what ours has become. Things around the world are moving so fast right now.
Last video, it's about West Point. But anyway, notice what Tucker Carlson, a machine. I've said again, we are no longer a country, we are a corporation. Trump is a CEO, not a president, and we are not citizens. We are employees. If you've ever worked for these big corporations like I have, that's the best way to understand how America is transformed. I'll do more examples on leadership, particularly when I worked for Amazon. It's a good example of why these corporations are destroying the leadership of America. There is a strategic push and intention to do this. There's also a reason to make Americans all individuals. If you go into my stream, so I'm fluent in the German language and the Chinese language, but if you go to my post, I'll tell you, I was going to get the secret. I thought we were going to talk more, but if you go to my pinned post, there's a lot of replies to it. There's someone from Germany, at least I assume he's speaking German to me. I don't know if he's located in Germany, but he's speaking German. So maybe he's Swiss, maybe he's Austrian, whatever. He speaks German. And he said something like, don't trust the Jew, others, which is fine. That doesn't bother me anymore. But, get to the point with leadership. And he said something about don't trust Jews, don't trust this. That was fine. And I responded to him. I said, who do you trust? I'm not going to argue with what he's saying, but who do you trust? And he comes back, good point. He says, I trust God and I trust my family. Good point. Then I responded, who's your family? And it's sad he didn't respond to me. He thinks I'm against them. I'm not. I'm for. I mean, if you look at Germany, it's just been absolutely just devastated after World War II. I mean, it's a shame. Anyway, the answer, what I'm telling you is this, Leadership 101, is America, there's been an intention to create individualism in America. It's easier to control. It's easier to control. We killed the father. You kill the father, you kill the family. And what is it? Something you learn basic in China, Confucius, the three societies, family, society, country. We don't have a family anymore. So my response to him is, if he would said something like what I said, who's your family? And we're going to assume he's going to say, well, my wife and my 2 children. My response would have said, that family ain't big enough. I got it. You got a wife and you got 2 kids. Good for you. And have that family bond. But if you think you're going to change the system, that ain't enough. You need to build the tribe. And Christianity was a great way to do it. But make no doubt about it, our governments, these globalist governments, they love individualism. Why? Creates weak people. It's easy to manipulate. Same with the FBI. I go into stories before. That's why it's very difficult to take down organized crime. It's very difficult. You'd be amazed when there's these group loyalties, these very strong bonds. It's very difficult to take down. Individualism, very easy. And that's what we are right now. So I would say, again, when I talk about, we're going to go to the last video, but build your tribe, build your family. And 1 or 2 is not enough. Build more. Anyway, it's a shame. We're going to go to this last video, and this is going on where the recommendations are saying on how to improve this stuff. I'm going to push back and say no. Now, this West Pointer, he's older than me, and I like how he talks. They know about me, though. I won't go into the story. I don't know why he's never acknowledged me or anything, but I'm also going to say at the very end, the type of advice that he's giving, I'm just going to politely say I disagree with him, even though, like I said, you'll know his name's Douglas MacArthur, something like that. Well, you'll see his name. Anyway, he comes from very good points. I think he knows about me, and it's a shame why he hasn't helped me out, because like I said, the West Point bonds is falling, just so you know. If you think, and I say this again, the reason why America is collapsing is about 1% of the American population served in the military. It's just 1%. We're not a family. Because you hear this all the time. We have to come together. We have to come together. Military veterans, and trust me, I'm not that much of an anomaly as you think. Ask many military veterans, and they will tell you too. Military veterans with military veterans, it literally could be a 50-50, meaning 50% have a bond and 50% we don't. And why is that so dangerous? Because before you could think about Americans in general coming together, brotherhood, sisterhood, military veterans, only 1% of the American population, we can't even come together, people. Do you see do you see what I'm saying? When military veterans, which are only 1% of the population, we don't even trust the other. Remember, the FBI, multiple times, West Pointers were spying on me. And there's many other examples with other things. I mean, look at Pat Tillman. What did the Army Rangers do to Pat Tillman, his family, and to America? They betrayed us. And what did I say is the biggest thing about courage? Not their muscles. Trust me, these Army Rangers can outrun me, push me, pull me any day. The Rangers are pretty tough. But what did I say about courage? Speaking the truth. And they lied. Why? Because they're cowards. They did an absolute cover-up because they wanted to abide by the law, not the laws, follow the orders, unethical and illegal orders of their supervisors because they want to do a cover-up. This is our military. We don't get along, and the ethics have gone down. Anyway, it's a short video, and then finally I'll end it, and I'll give you again the advice of where to go.
Had a pretty cool. One final thing I want to ask you is about the nationalconversation.org. You had a pretty cool video yesterday titled "All for What." Could you expand on this for everybody listening?
Yeah, this was something that I talked with some of my colleagues at the.
So hopefully everyone knows this is I said Douglas MacArthur, Douglas McGregor. He's obviously an older grad. I never knew anything about him until I got on social media, and a lot of what he's saying, I'm tracking. At the end, I disagree. We'll explain. But he knows about me. I reached out to their organization. I could be wrong, but I was like, listen, I'm also a West Point grad, government corruption. And the first questions are, well, if you want to become a member, you have to pay money. And I said, well, we're not at the member stage. I mean, I'm just reporting some government corruption. Can you tell Douglas I'm a West Point grad, do something? And the woman, she was like admin. She took my information. Nothing came to it. I have a feeling Douglas knows about me. Why he hasn't responded to me, I don't know. But remember, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I've listened to what he's saying, but don't fool yourself to think, well, West Pointers, duty on our country. No, we'll do another video on that goes into Pete Hegseth, but the FBI paid West Pointers to spy on me. And this is the collapse of America. When West Point, duty on our country, can no longer be trusted to the American people. I mean, everyone had you could say, not bad thoughts, but apprehensive thoughts about the intelligence community. Even probably before I left the FBI and I wrote Senator Chuck Grassley, I think most people were like FBI, CIA. I don't know, they're kind of spooky, but I still trust them. This is back when I was growing up as a kid. Not West Point though. You shouldn't have said that. I mean, most Americans be West Point. Wow, military academy, duty on our country. Those guys are all Americans. When West Point starts falling, and it has been, it's over, people. It really is over. You're talking to someone here in Menela. I'm the 12th person in the history of America to earn dual commissions. I went through the entire what's called the Army ROTC program. I was commissioned as a second lieutenant, David Baumblatt, and then I reported to West Point as a second lieutenant, got demoted back down to a cadet, and I did my 4 years of West Point, graduated West Point, and got commissioned again. I'm very familiar with this, and I'm telling you, the West Point of today is not the West Point of the years gone by. And I think you would agree too in America. today's America is not the America 50 years ago. Everything is changing. It's getting bad. But that's a little backstory between Douglas. Either way, I still agree with a lot of his political rhetoric. At the end, though, he's wrong. And I'm going to explain it. He's just wrong, meaning his solution to it.
National conversation. We're interested in forming a third party. We would like to see a viable third party
So just remember that third party, just remember.
Movement out there. We know there are other little parties that have been around for a long time, but we need a viable third party movement because the Democrats and Republicans, frankly speaking, there's not enough difference there to make it worthwhile anymore. Mm-hmm. And the extent of corrupt influence and control that exists thanks to, huge quantities of money means that they're not really interested in us anymore. They're interested in their own bank accounts and insider trading and advancing their personal interests more than anything else. So that, that's the background on the national conversation. We're trying to get people together and sort of build it out. Now, I made that video because of frustration. What are we doing? What are we over there trying to achieve? How does this help us? We've completely lost the plot. It's like being at 2 o'clock in the morning. When I was in Winter Ranger, you would hear somebody call out the name Ranger Smith. It's black outside. It's dark. You can't see anything. You're freezing your rear end off. Your tears as they come out of your eyes are watering and they freeze on your skin. And they say, "All right, Ranger, you're in charge. Where are you going to go?" Well, if you've lost the plot, if you haven't paid attention to where you're going, even in pitch black darkness, you haven't looked at the map periodically, you haven't oriented yourself. This is before GPS and all the neat gadgets. Mm-hmm. You are screwed. You failed. So I think we're in that position right now. We've lost the plot. We're not looking at what really counts. 46, 47, 50%, I don't know what it is now, of farmers are declaring bankruptcy in large part because they can't afford fertilizer. What? How many young American men simply can't find a job? I mean, we can just go down the list of all these things. What are we doing about this? And what is the outcome of this madness now in the Persian Gulf? The only thing we've done is make Iran more powerful and more influential than it's ever been. And oh, by the way, why were we trying to destroy it? And somebody says, well, they killed our guys in Iraq. Oh, well, wait a minute. Let's stop and think about this for a minute. First of all, if we had a foreign army operating down in Mexico and the Mexicans started to resist, would we help the Mexicans? I think so. Mm-hmm. I think that's what the Iranians did. Secondly, have you heard about this thing called the Iran-Iraq War? That went on for almost a decade, that resulted in somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 800,000 casualties and hundreds of thousands of dead in Iran. And who financed Saddam Hussein? Who helped build his army? Who provided him with the chemical warfare capability? I mean, let's just go down the list. We present everything as one-sided. We're the men in the white hats and everybody else is wearing a black hat. Well, it's not that way. It's never been that way. That doesn't mean we're all bad or all good, but this business of being involved with Iran just doesn't hold up to closer scrutiny. It doesn't make any sense. There's no interest there that drives this for us, And the idea that you have to park a tank on top of an oil well to get the oil out, I think that's misleading. Somebody said to me back in 2003, when we were looking at going into Iraq, we were looking at that in 2002. They said, don't these people understand Saddam will sell you all the oil you want? I said, yeah, but the people in charge don't want to buy it from him.
Yeah.
So we ended up going in, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't make sense. Not when you start looking at the price you pay in human blood and treasure.
Right.
And we paid too much for too long.
Agree with you.
Again, we started about this thing about Iran. I don't think this war is over. I just don't. I wish it were, but I just don't see any sort of proper planned exit. This is like Afghanistan, chaos. Mm-hmm. Nobody's thought anything through.
Yeah, except this time it's not a bunch of tribesmen in a landlocked country that's inconsequential one way or the other. They control a major chunk of the world's economy through a strait, and they're far more advanced and far more well-connected globally.
Yeah, and let's hope all this talk about a potential nuclear weapon is just talk.
Oh, yeah.
There's no future in that. The Iranians can't be that stupid. I think they should stick with their position they've held for years, which is no nuclear weapon. They're much better off.
Okay, we'll just end it there. And again, I definitely think a lot of what Douglas has said politically, I agree with a lot of what he says. Maybe the benefit of the doubt, maybe he doesn't know about me, but it's a shame. I think he does, should have put in something. But in terms of leadership, we're going to go there. What's interesting when he talked about Ranger School and direction, I was always in the military very good at land navigation. So Army ROTC, Fort Lewis, Washington Advanced Camp, I was the only one that maxed out land navigation, both with the practical and the tabletop exercise. And part of that with leadership is when you take your troops, you need to know where you're going. And I've always excelled in land navigation. What does that relate to leadership? A very good understanding with physics is management and leadership. And it reminds me of land navigation. When you think of management, think of a circle. It's a system. And that system has all little dots: money, time, resources, machinery, whatever. And your job as a manager is to maintain that system and increase effectiveness and efficiency. But it is a system. Don't go outside the box or the circle. Maintain that. What is leadership? Because it reminds me of land navigation all of a sudden. It's a vector, force, and direction. Part of the reason I excelled at it, I don't want to do it, but when you're at these West Point and Army ROC basic camp, you're getting yelled at a lot by the drill sergeants. God, yelled and yelled and yelled. And there one time I was recruited by some former Delta Force guys, and they were saying I would have done well. If I would have stayed in the military, I think I would have done that. I worked very well alone. And the reason that I think I excel very good at land navigation goes is you're getting yelled at almost all the time. And the first time I was able to do land navigation, it was actually in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I couldn't believe it. The drill sergeant said, there's your map, there's your compass, and go out into the wilderness. And it was like, usually you're gone for like 3, 4, 5 hours or something like that. And I was like, no one can yell at me. And then the drill sergeants will let go because the time is clicking. And I loved it. And maybe because I grew up as Boy Scouts, I was an Eagle Scout. And I was like, this is phenomenal. I get away from all that yelling and push-ups and sit-ups, like you can imagine. And I'm in the wilderness. Now, don't get me wrong, night land navigation is not as fun because you're bumping. You got to use your night NVGs or using a red flashlight. And you're doing slow. But in the daytime, I thought, man, this is like Boy Scouts. I could do a hiking trip. I'm all by myself. I paced my time, and I started doing and I really got very good at land navigation because it was just so relaxing that you're just finally away from all that yelling and you're by yourself and you're basically on a hike. Now, if you don't know what you're doing, it could be stressful. If you're lost and you don't make the points, then you'll fail. But as long as you know what you're doing, the land nav was the best part because I think it was just basically you're able to be left alone and you're in nature. But always remember, leadership, vector, direction, and force, kind of like that land navigation. Now, we're going to go back to a couple of things with what he's saying. What he's trying to talk about is a third party. And I've heard this about maybe with Massey and a former congressman or still congressman, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Good luck. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. What I'm telling you is this. We have now created a country in America of 350 million people, plus or minus. And when I talk about I could talk about the essence of the founding fathers. We drank the communist Kool-Aid. Remember, communism, globalism, corporatism, feminism, they're all related. Don't fool yourself. These globalist corporations have a communist ideology. So diversity is our strength. You know that. We have now gotten to the point in America, I don't know who an American is anymore. I mean, it's even bad in Asia. I see it all the time. Like when I would go to the airports all the time, I see the anchor babies in front of me. Like the Chinese, they'll have their anchor babies. These kids don't speak a word of English, whatever. But I don't know what an American is anymore, who it is, what our value system is. You ask 100 Americans, what's an American? You'll get 100 different answers. You ask 100 different Chinese people who and what a Chinese person is, that answer is going to be very, very homogenous. So what am I saying? it's come to the conclusion that either one, you're seeing more and more Americans leave America. It's a sinking ship. You're seeing it more and more. In fact, I did the last video where you're starting to see rich people. This is with who's the rich guy from Palantir, the PayPal guy. I'm forgetting his name. He left. He's now going to Argentina. You're starting to see about Peter Thiel. I think Peter Thiel's the name. So you're not even seeing regular Americans. You're seeing rich Americans leave. That's not that you don't have to. But I'm telling you, if you're going to stay in America, you have not seen anything yet. The amount of money that the American government and corporations and I have 4 master's degrees that's been invested on me in leadership. Everything that I've learned, everything from leadership points to this direction that I've not changed my mind since 2005. America is going to go phase 1 collapse economic. It's going to go revolution with Washington, D.C., and that'll be civil war. You're going to see this. It's possible that there could be a peaceful divide. But what I'm telling you, and this is why I disagree with a third party, this country is going to split. I don't even believe it's going to split just in 2 parts. It gets literally split into 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 parts. It's going to split. And I've said this many times. You have 3 choices. 1, you're going to have to leave America. 2, you're going to have to get off the grid and live a self-reliant life, most likely in the country as a farmer. You know, you're going to pick upstate New York, Wyoming, Montana, some type of rural area in America, and you're going to ride the storm out on your self-sufficient farm, whatever that is. But that's the objective. You're riding out the storm. So instead of leaving the country and just watching it collapse, you're going to be on your farm and watching it collapse. That's 1. 3, if you are going to get involved into politics, which is great, where you're like, no, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to get on the sidelines being like a farmer. I'm in the fight. This is my country and I'm fighting. And I'm telling you right now, America first is a day late and a dollar short. It is going to be state first. You are going to need to put your political backing behind a governor, not Washington, D.C. We have passed the Rubicon in America. There is no coming together. I see again, you cannot even unite military veterans, and we are 1% of the American public. We are the duty honor country, the brothers and sisters. We don't like each other. I'm telling you, it is what it is. Ask military veterans, what do they think about military officers? I don't think it's going to be high. So if military veterans that are 1%, you think even FBI people, we don't get together, it's not going to happen. We've become so diverse in so many different categories, race, religion, gender, you name it. It is past. We are 350 million people. We have passed it. It is time for the states. Now, you're already seeing people leave certain blue states into red states. It's already happened. People are married. People are leaving America. People are leaving states. This is what happened. Same thing our forefathers. Our forefathers left Europe to go to a better life. This is human nature. People pick up and move. When things get bad, they do. A lot of people say, I'll never move. A lot of times it's because they can't, because it's difficult to move. Sometimes you have finances. In fact, I don't want to change the subject so much, but from intelligence standpoint, there's a reason why there's always a focus on the young children. This is why Charlie Kirk, one of the reasons I do believe he was assassinated. And I don't agree necessarily with Charlie Kirk and everything, meaning I would have said one of the ways to reduce the violence is we just split. So you have liberal ideology, flood your blue state. You have conservative ideology, flood your red state. And then you and I, the enemy of our enemy is Washington, D.C. You do what you got to do in the blue state. What? Because I'm telling you, the ship is going to sink. But anyway, going back to Charlie Kirk, there's a reason that intelligence communities, agencies focus on young college people. They have 3 things. 1, they are young and healthy. Once you get older, you have medical problems, you're on medication, you can't even do 10 push-ups. Because revolutions come, people need to be physically fit. 2, they don't have any children. They don't have any wives. They're single and they're mobile. And 3, for lack of a better word, they are educated, even though college is overrated, but they're in the know. They want to be, they're influenced. They're not, when you're working at a factory every day, you don't have time. It's like, dude, I just got to work at the factory. college educated. So that's why in every country, it's not just American, when revolutions start, it's the college educated people. I have no doubt about it. Whoever is influencing this 18 to 25-year-old group, that is the group. I'm an old man. I'm not starting any revolutions. That's why the FBI, there's no evidence of anything. I left America in 2010, literally to be left alone. I've never said anything negative about the government until I got on social media. I've never, even everything, I've never said anything about negative about the FBI, nothing. I wanted to be left alone. This is an absolute witch hunt based on revenge with the FBI and some of these corporations. But when it comes to young college kids, they have potential. Where they go, it can determine. So I would say is sooner or later, we have to come to the conclusion that in America, we have passed the Rubicon. And you are going to have to say, because again, even if you're a MAGA, it's very politically incorrect. Say you're from South Dakota and Donald Trump visits you in South Dakota and says, hey, I'm just giving an example. I'm thinking of like a hard, or we'll say Texas, because Texas is sort of like that. Texas, heavy Republican, heavy MAGA. And Donald Trump comes to you and says, hey, Texan, you're a conservative, right? You're a patriot, right? America first, right? Excuse me, Mr. President. America first, second. Texas first. Doesn't sound too very well. Goes back to the Civil War. If there is an institution that is so intimately connected to the Civil War, it is West Point. They were not traitors. General Lee swore an oath of allegiance to the state of Virginia, along with the other West Point graduates. When the Civil War kicked off, their allegiance of number one was not to the United States of America. It was to their states. But I want to tell you right now, think how that sounds. It sounds very revolutionary. So there you are, Donald Trump, he's having a big rally at a Texas or red state. He's like, I don't want everyone to agree with me. It's right up here. This is the great state of Tennessee, the great state of Texas. We all agree that it's America first. Well, I mean, I don't even know if it's America first. Sounds like it's Israel first. So that's a different topic. But anyway, and you say, Mr. President, we love America, but America second. The state of Tennessee, the state of Texas is first. Texas first, America second. How does that sound? Do you think Fox News would air that? No way. Because I'm telling you, what's going to happen is this. This system in Washington, D.C. is not fixable. I knew it. I said, I am leaving America and I want anything to do. I want it to be left alone. This reminds me of the Rambo movie with the corrupt cop. Just leave me alone. That's all I left. I never said anything negative. Leave me alone. So either you're going to have to leave, but if you stay in America, it's going to get worse. And your home base, in fact, what's the translation for Al-Qaeda? The base. You need to have your base. Washington, D.C. is not going to be your base anymore. It will be the state capital. What state is going to be? I don't know. You're going to have to pick and choose wisely. But if you're far left, you're not our enemy. Then pick a blue state. Get these blue states bluer. Get these red states redder. We're not enemies because at the end of the day, what I think will happen is phase one will be collapsed. Once that happens, people are going to lose faith in the federal government, lose faith. And the corruption is going to get so bad, they're not going to start paying their taxes. Remember, three things: increase of corruption, increase of debt, and increase of economic or financial inequality. Those are the three levels that it's going to get America to collapse. Increase of corruption. You, just like this video, are going to become more and more think, I don't believe in voting anymore. This government is corrupt. How is this former FBI agent absolutely ignored? Think about it. You know about me right now. When I say the government, how is it that you, a normal American citizen or even a foreigner, you know about me, but these elite intelligence agencies or Donald Trump, of course they know about me, and they're ignoring me, and they have a duty. So corruption is going to increase to the point that American citizens are going to say voting and paying taxes, not for me. Financial inequality is going to increase. Oh, by the way, Donald Trump is part of that, to where you're going to say, this system, unlike you or unlike me, I grew up when I was a kid, you work hard, you play by the rules, you make money, it's done. This system's rigged. What happened to me, I got legal justice in China over corrupt Boeing, then in America, this system's rigged. So financial inequality is going to go up, and also debt. Both personal debt's going to go up. People are just going to say, I'm not paying off this debt. Student loans, they're like, I'm not paying off. You think the government's going to pay off their debt? Think about it. You're an American citizen. Why should you pay your personal debts when the government's not paying off? debt, corruption, financial inequality is going to go up. That's going to form a collapse. That collapse is going to get to the people. That is going to fast forward you to where I was in 2005, where that is going to do step one. And that is going to be like, I have now lost faith in my government. I mean, that's why I laughed. I mean, it wasn't anger. I was very thankful, privileged that I was born and raised in America. But I lost faith when I saw in the government. Once that happens with the collapse, that is going to be your register where you're like, I no longer have faith. So where are you going to go? You're going to go to your state, or you're going to leave the country. You're going to have to go to your state. And the states are going to get bluer, which is good. If you're far left, I don't have a problem with you. Just go to your state and make it blue. Don't come to a red state, though. And if you're in the red, you're probably going to have to get kicked out of the blue. It's going to get, this is how America is going to get fractionalized. So there's going to be no more faith in Washington, D.C. Now you're going to put your face in your state capital, and the states are going to get redder and redder and bluer. That's no problem. And it's going to be state first and no longer federal, no longer Washington, D.C. first. Once that happens, then the federal government is going to claim insurrection. This is the revolution, where the revolution is going to be aimed at the federal level, because they're not going to allow you to do this. Think about that. Have you ever heard of a suggestion ever by Fox News, anyone talking about a peaceful, not a violent separation? Anyone on mainstream? You know, everyone goes to Harvard, you do all these degrees, all these smart people, you know, all these problems in America. When was the last time you saw on mainstream, whether it's CNN or Fox, they're the same thing, by the way. It's like the Republicans, Democrats, same thing. But think about it, on a mainstream political dialogue, how many times have you think, well, one solution could be peaceful, no violence, maybe we should just separate? You never hear about it. Because if it ever happens, what would Washington, D.C. do? This is Donald Trump. He's sending in the troops, and he's going to squash that rebellion. Even though the rebellion just be, we want to secede from the Union. That's where the rebellion happens. Then Washington, D.C., if it goes to the point, they may then co-opt other states, and then it will form sort of an alliance where then they could go together. I know it's getting far-fetched, but I'm telling you, give it time. But I think the linchpin for everything, because what did I say America is? It's a corporation. So I really think the linchpin for everything is money, because it's really for the same reason that we don't have a culture in America. Why do people work in these corporations? Do you really, I mean, you work at Coca-Cola, you work at IBM, I don't know, you work at Walmart. Do you really, I mean, these corporations don't really care about you. Do you really think, you know, I'm working for, you know, I don't know what corporation, I'm working for investment banking or whatever these corporations are. And you're like, I love it here and we work together. You're working there for a paycheck. And if there was a better paycheck in another corporation, you're gone. And if the corporation could hire cheaper labor, you're gone. You're only doing it for the money. And all your colleagues are there superficially getting along because you have a paycheck. But if that paycheck stops, you're gone. There's no loyalty to the corporation. The corporation has no loyalty to you. This is, again, where the left and the right kind of see eye to eye. Remember that Luigi Mannioni, when he smoked that CEO? What did I say? Do these corporations care about you? No. Why should you care about them? Do you see how it's going down, this sense of caring? So once economically, and Trump knows this is probably where universal basic income's coming. Anytime the government gives you free stuff, that should be a red flag. COVID, it's free. The COVID vaccine, take it for free. Red flag. Universal basic income, because they know if they don't keep this economic system going, there is going to be a revolution. People need to feed. People need money. And either way, like I said, this sort of thing about trying to do a third party, if I'm wrong, go for it. But I think more Americans are just giving up and just leaving. But I'm telling you, the political solution that's eventually going to come is going to be state politics. It's no longer going to be Washington, D.C. I've talked enough. We'll do other videos. But I can tell you for this, if you've listened to all my videos, you will listen to how many times I've asked people for money or buying my book. It's less than 1%, even if that. Go through all my videos and you'll find out how many times I said, could you give me money? Could you buy the? None. This is not about money. What I'm asking is, if you're an American citizen, I am asking for your help, not for the politicians. They have a duty. I have government corruption report. And when government corruption is reported, it is a public good for everyone. Remember what I reported in the FBI to Senator Chuck Grassley? It's not like I was a fan of Muslims, but the FBI was illegally spying on American citizen Muslims. What I say, yesterday it was Muslims, today it could be Christians. Today they're spying on me. Tomorrow they might be spying on you and your sister, your brothers. That's why public corruption, that's why whistleblowers is a public good and it should be dispersed. Why are they not doing this? Why is the media? Why am I censored? Because it is a story beyond of this other. Why? Because it involves China and it involves entities that are even stronger than the FBI and the CIA. Who are they? Our corporations. They run us, meaning Amazon and Boeing, the collusion with China. But every single politician, they know about me. The Trump government knows about me. And the best way you can help me that doesn't cost any money is if you could do two things. If you know contact with a politician or a politician's staff, you send me their email and I will CC you or BCC you, and you will see straight up how much they ignore me. Because if they ignore me, they'll ignore you. Then why are you paying your taxes? Or you could just forward, if you go to my X or whatever, forward this, and eventually maybe some type of media will do their job and say, well, we always say we thank military veterans for their service. It's propaganda. They don't mean it. But maybe we should actually do something and just ask the simple question. Why is this military veteran not being answered simple questions of why is he on the FBI terrorist watch list? Why is my passport flagged? Why is it when I go to America, I'm detained, searched, interrogated, humiliated, deceived, physically assaulted, and under covert surveillance? This is not normal. This is not normal. Why was I illegally terminated from Boeing and replaced by Chinese? Why is there collusion with Amazon and Boeing with China? This is not normal. Meaning, if the answer from the government is absolute silence, when I do FBI 101, if you remember me before with Director Ray, I wasn't a fan of Director Ray, and I said, you don't need to be a former FBI agent. When you see the southern border open and illegals pouring in, who knows who these people are, terrorists, spies. You don't need to be a trained FBI agent to know that the director of the FBI, and this would have been done under Hoover, should say, that's probably a national security threat, so I'm going to take charge. You could be a normal. When you're a normal person looking at this situation, think, how is it that I am a normal American citizen, you're watching this, and I know about this guy, David Baumblatt? It's impossible that every single politician and our government doesn't know about him. That makes no sense. And he is a military veteran. The government always likes to say how much they take care of their veterans and they support military veterans. And Donald Trump was elected to drain the swamp and fight government corruption. Probably not an answer would be absolute silence. So that's what I'm asking. If you could just send this message out, and it is time to put pressure on the politicians, the Trump government, which is technically, I was a supporter of Trump. Everyone knows me. If you go to my videos, I was definitely pro-Trump. I was never anything with the Democrats, which shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't matter anyway. Or if worse comes to worse, then just send it to the media. Just forward this and say, why is this person on? Because I am telling you, living in China, I am the canary in the coal mine. Our true masters in America are our corporations. They own us. They control us. And these corporations like to make you think that Russia's the enemy, China's all these, all they care about is money. And if they can make money at your expense from any of these other nations, particularly China, you will be sold out. Just on this alone, does it make sense how an American military veteran was illegally terminated by Boeing and replaced by a Chinese national in China to be in charge of the security for Boeing in China? And Boeing is part of the American military industrial complex. Nothing makes sense, people. Nothing makes sense. And I tell people, sooner or later, Americans are going to get more and more used to just saying our government's corrupt. It's just, it is what it is. And once it gets to that level, then people are going to change their mind about voting, useless, and about paying their taxes, no thanks. And it's going to spiral fast. Other than that, I thank everyone for your time. This is David Baumblatt from Terrabins Leadership again. At the very least, if you could help me out, I'd appreciate it. Just forward this on, hopefully either politicians or to some media source. It is time for government corruption to be reported. It is time for the politicians and Trump government to do their job, their oath that they sworn, and your tax money is paying them. If allegations of government corruption are presented, they have a duty to investigate, not to ignore. And if they're part of the media who always likes to say they support military veterans, then have them. Let's do an interview. But the goal is, it is time for the government to start talking and stop hiding. This is David Baumblatt from Terrabins Leadership. I appreciate your support. And to the patriots out there, lead to victory.